My name is Tyler Fornes, and I am one of the co-hosts of the Good, the Bad, and the Hungy AEW podcast here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. We take a broad scope approach to the world of All Elite Wrestling and the entire universe of Tony Khan. We talk about the big matches, the big stars, the promos, the storylines, and we also look at it from a big picture perspective. How are things going to change over the course of the next 10 years with AEW still in the picture? How are companies like WWE going to adapt and adjust to AEW? Are they going to be a similar way like they did with WCW in the late 1990s? Will there be a counterpunch? We talk about all of that and more on The Good, the Bad, and the Hungy every week on the Voice of Wrestling Network.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So fast to freedom. Stars tonight together. Hear everyone is singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for June 24th, 2025. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on social media at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. There's a red box that says sponsor of this podcast, and you can click that and you can set up a one-time or recurring donation. Why it's sponsored, we're still trying to figure that out, but there's no obligation whatsoever about that. But we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I am one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside, as always, your other host, Case Lowe. And Case, I have to ask, how is the city holding up after the events of June 22nd?
Jesus Christ. I can't even get a moment of peace on this topic. It's everywhere I go. It's everywhere I go.
Well, I'm asking out of concern.
No, I look, as I told somebody the night of the NBA Finals Game 7, I said, I've had better Q2s in my life. I'm on a bit of a tough stretch here. The Tyrese Halliburton injury, the torn Achilles, which will now take him out for the entirety of the NBA season next year, is without a doubt the worst thing to happen in my sports fandom. The Pacers, their last 4-star players, Danny Granger, Paul George, Victor Oladipo, and now Tyrese Halliburton, they've all had serious knee injuries, with George, Oladipo, and Halliburton having catastrophic knee injuries. And that is something that, with my Rams, in football, the Rams have had very bad seasons, but nothing as tragic as this. The low point for the Rams fandom was not beating the Eagles in the NFC playoffs this past year when they had a real chance to. in baseball, growing up a Tigers fan, not seeing the Verlander, Scherzer, Anibal Sanchez, Miguel Cabrera contingent, not seeing them win a ring was devastating. But there wasn't one singular moment that was a bullet to the head in the way that this was. This was so bad. And Halliburton came out so strong in that game. He led the game in 3-pointers made. He only played 7 minutes. And it just felt like destiny was on their side and that this was going to be it. And it ended up being, a genuine tragedy in a way that I was very worried about this in game 6. My argument to the people in my life was I don't want to see him play in game 6 because I'm afraid that a calf strain will lead to a torn Achilles. And then he played so well in game 6. I was like, all right, wheel him out there for game 7. And we learned our lesson there. It is going to be really interesting to see what the Pacers do. It's the most fun. This playoff run is the most fun I've ever had as a sports fan. Dominating the Bucks, and Bucks fans continue to find all the excuses in the world for why they lost, but ultimately the Pacers are just so much of a better basketball team than the Bucks are at this point. Beating the Bucks was great. Beating the Cavs was phenomenal. And now everybody has to retcon their Cavs takes, which is completely absurd. They were absolutely finals contenders going into the playoffs, and they got brutally outplayed by the Pacers. Beating the Knicks is just the sweetest emotion you can feel. There's nothing quite like it in sports. That was fantastic. And despite the horror that was the second half of Game 4 in the NBA Finals when the Thunder made a nice comeback, this series was incredibly enjoyable up until the Halliburton injury, and then the Pacers made it close to end it. So I know it's a very long-winded answer to say that I'm fine, but a lot of pain, a lot of stewing in my apartment these past 2 days of what could have been.
And I have to say, you are at least sounding better 48 hours out than I did when I had a similar one of those. Like your head's on straight about this, and you had like the overcoming the Knicks and being able to kind of revisit that rivalry and beating them in that kind of way. I know I could always say that, like, the saying is like, oh, the NBA Finals then are a added benefit, but getting there and again then getting to that point and then having like that kind of event happen, it being able to already parse that within 48 hours, I have to say, is really commendable.
Well, we took the Thunder to 7, and I thought a lot of people in, I'll label it sports adjacent media, sports lifestyle media, and I certainly don't follow any of these products, but like the Barstools and the Barstool adjacent places that pop up on my feed, whether I want them to or not, I thought they really exposed themselves by talking down about the Thunder, because this Thunder team is, a historically great
SGA,
team.
It has become like the player of the era.
Yeah.
Just like within 18 months.
No, absolutely an incredible team. And to take them to 7 was just, it was a joy. I mean, on a very real level, it was, I have a great relationship with my dad anyways, but being able to go through these playoffs and, text my dad during these games, call my dad after these games, and just, really bond over this stuff was just a really, this is a playoff run that I will remember for the rest of my life. It was enjoyable from start until Halliburton tore his Achilles. And, I will not, I obviously would have liked for them to have won a title, but this is, like I said, this is something I will remember forever, and I'll really enjoy it. The Halliburton injury, before we talk about Dragongate, because there's really pressing news we have to get to, the Halliburton injury did remind me of a memory that I had completely forgotten about, which was when Oladipo got hurt. This is 2018 or 2019, and it was a deal where, his leg injury, he had to be taken off on a stretcher, prayer circle around him, never the same player. When he got hurt, he was an all-star and an all-NBA guy, or at the very least on the fringes of being an all-NBA guy, was never the same again, was never relevant again in the NBA after this knee injury. And I just remembered that when he got hurt, I had just walked into a show at Improv Olympic, the Improv Theater in Chicago.
Oh, sure. Yeah. The home of Del Close.
That's correct. And I check my phone. I see the Pacers star player getting carted off on a stretcher, and then the house lights go down. And I've got to watch 75 minutes of improv knowing that the Pacers season is over. And I was like, oh, that's right. That was the worst night ever.
Well, was that at least house teams? Like, you got to have like 2 heralds back to back, or was this like the student showcases?
No, they used to do a gimmick called Virgin Daiquiri, which was a free all female performer show on Wednesday nights that was really funny. A lot of the women that performed at Virgin Daiquiri throughout the years have gone on to be in TV and do
sure,
notable
yeah.
things around the city. So it was like an all-star team. Yeah, it was a house team. It was really good. But I just remember going like, I so badly don't want to be here. I need to know what's happening with Victor Oladipo. I can't look at my phone. Looking at my phone would be super rude right now. I guess I'm just stuck being miserable at an improv show, which is not a place that you want to be.
And just for like 75 minutes, basically going, can I like keep my phone in my pocket, but stretch my pocket out just to like this extent? And if I'm able to like do this one-handed, can I swipe down the brightness? Because if I do it this way, no, like there's always like that kind of moment, and it's always like at like a place like this where you're going like, well, I just can't like go with that, and you try to find like at least you start doing like the mental gymnastics about how am I going to look at my phone, because I could eat up like at least 10 minutes of stewing.
Yeah, there was a lot on my mind that night. It was a great ordeal. As for Dragongate, let's talk programming notes up top real quick.
Yep, let's do it.
So what we're about to talk about is obviously in flux, and there's a chance that there's some breaking news. If breaking news occurs and either Mike or I feel like recording audio, maybe we get a joint emergency show in. Maybe there's some solo emergency audio that comes in at some point. But as of now, you're going to get this week's show, which is going to cover the full Kobe World card, not a full preview, but just a rundown of the card, the happenings in Kobe Sambo Hall, a brief review of the latest Prime Zone, which is getting rave reviews, and then a big exercise we're going to do at the end of this podcast on the history of the Dreamgate Championship. The next time you'll hear us, assuming there's no need for breaking news audio, and we're hoping there's no breaking news audio,
it'll be clear within 5 minutes what breaking news audio Case is obliquely referring to.
As long as there's nothing impromptu, the next time you'll hear us will be the week of Kobe World with Jay on the show doing a Corkin review and a Kobe World preview with Jay again the week before World. And then obviously will be your go-to place for World coverage, both written and audio. So that is the plan right now. We'll get back to Michinoku Pro here as we get through June into the middle of July, probably about a month away from another Those Days episode.
Yeah, I mean, this is the high point of Dragongate's schedule, and you, from Open the Voice Gate, we have, and we take it very seriously, like the idea around Kobe World Season is the time for Dragongate, and that's also a time for us to like stay on the Dragongate beat, really. And I think with like doing the previews with Jay for like the week of the 6th. We're gonna call that the week of the 6th for when it is released. Yeah, you all will be getting a lot of coverage leading up to it. Case and I know we both have like written pieces that we are throwing around that we'll try to get up there, because Kobe World really kind of sneaks up on us this year. This month of June kind of got away from us. But yeah, if there is something that is late breaking, you will hear from us before that episode from Jay. And I think with that, we should probably stop talking obliquely about this case. And there was a chance I was going to do a Halliburton to Skywalker transition, but the programming note was timely and needed. But coming out of the Kobe Sambo Hall show from Sunday the 22nd, we have a giant question mark about Shun Skywalker, his knee, and the Kobe World main event of Shun Skywalker versus Yamato for the Open the Dreamgate title. Shun Skywalker is not listed on the next run of shows that takes us up to the July 3rd Corkin Hall show. Shun Skywalker has tweeted since then this happened during the Natural Vibes versus Z-Brats match at Kobe Sambo Hall. Shun going down on a bit of like a leg twist situation. There was a moment that I knew that the bump that like his knee gets really kind of rocked and things go quiet, but then really he lifts off UT for what looks like a BT bomb attempt. As soon as UT is basically up over his shoulders in the crucifix, Shun's knees buckle. He goes to the outside. He's still kind of working and doing like the Shun cry as they do kind of after about 2 minutes of awkwardness. They get back to the match because there was Kakuta and Strong Machine J storyline stuff that they had to get to, and that was the last we saw of Shun Skywalker on the show. Yamato cut a long promo in the main event after his match against Z-Brats, referring to the main event. And that's kind of where we are at right now, Case, I think. Did I leave out any of the major details?
No, I think that covers it. You know, Shun goes for a BT bomb on UT right when he's got UT at his apex. Shun's knee buckles. He falls outside of the ring. And like you said, we don't see him again, and we don't see him in any of the upcoming cards, and we don't see him notably on this upcoming Cork and Hall show. So that obviously leaves the main event of Kobe World at press time here. You know, as we record on June 24th, it leaves it a little bit up in the air. I will read verbatim a DM that I got from somebody that attended this show. It was funny. I woke up Sunday morning and I had a few DMs, and it was the VoiceGate equivalent of the Kennedy assassination, where I am multiple people like, hey, I've got to talk to you. Like, Shun Skywalker got hurt in Kobe. I really need to talk to you about this. But
all right, Dan Rather. I didn't know you were at Parkland Hospital at this time.
It was very Cronkite. It was just like, hey, we've got to talk for a second. I'm like, oh fuck, what happened? It's like, oh, Shun got hurt. Oh my god, this is serious. This is really bad.
Yeah.
But I got a DM from somebody that was at the show that I will pick it up from. They were describing the move, and I'll pick it up from when they said. Shun crumpled onto the mat, rolled out of the ring, and then came crawling in absolute agony over to where I sat. In the broadcast, you can see everyone sort of stop and look in the direction of what's happening. It was grim. He was literally within a meter's length, so I heard everything. Kai and the other brass asking if he was all right, applying ice to the inner side of his right knee, and then getting him in a plank position to keep the weight off of the knee or possibly shake out a cramp. It's hard to know. He relayed something to Homari, and then Ryo Saito came over as a medical translator, which, can you believe we have medical translators that listen to this show? So this person says, so as a medical translator, not a physician, but I deal with documentation on a daily basis and have a good working knowledge of anatomy. From where the ice was applied, it looked to be a medial collateral ligament injury in his right knee. Can't say what grade. Man, I just feel for him. The sounds he was making were not normal at all. So that is the in-arena perspective, somebody that was in Kobe Sambo Hall when Shun went down, and the live feel from inside that building that this appeared to be a pretty grim injury for Skywalker. The person I reached out to in Dragongate was unsure if Skywalker had gone to the hospital that night. My guess is because he's not on the upcoming shows that he has since gone to the hospital, might have a diagnosis by this point, and it's just not public. But Mike, we're now in a situation where we are 2.5 weeks from Kobe World, and we might not have a main event.
Yeah, and it immediately kind of takes you back to 2008 and Shima's neck injury, right? Like they were clearly positioning it to a 3-way Kobe World main event in 2008. And I don't remember exactly how far out Shima was gone, but it was after the Hulk and Shingo time limit draw that they decide that then that's going to be the Kobe World main event for the vacated Dreamgate title. Like, that's the only other time that this has happened in at least company history. I mean, there's times like the Kota Minoura debacle that we were 2 weeks out and we weren't certain about the Dreamgate main event. But really, for a match that, and we've talked about this since the match was made, Case, that really has been built up all year, it does kind of seem, at least for like the 48 hours that we're at right now, that there's a whole lot of kind of wait and see when that, at least like watching it and like rolling back and seeing the situation a couple of times, it just was kind of clear, at least to me, and I'm no sort of medical professional whatsoever. Like, the idea of some knee ligament thing was the first thing that kind of came to mind. And when you go to the Kobe World main event, when we already have a tentative full card out, there's not you're talking about like almost a full card shakeup if you're going to change it up for bringing someone up to the main event match, if you have to pull someone out of other title matches, or if you're trying to now go with a break glass option here. It's just, it it's kind of, at least to me reading, in case you're the one who's talked to people, not me here, but it reads kind of like, let's hope that this is a strain or a tweak, and let's wait and see when the inflammation is down what the doctor says, and we'll adjust from that there. At least that's kind of my read of the situation. And it's kind of the unfortunate thing of, we're recording when we did when that injury went down, that maybe within 48 hours we might have a much clearer picture of the situation.
So a few notes here for the sake of historical record. So CIMA was Dreamgate champion, and he got hurt in May of 2008. He got hurt in that cage match. The Hulk Shingo 60-minute time limit draw was June 29th, 2008. World that year was July 27th, 2008. So
2 more weeks, essentially.
Yeah, they had a full month. They had a month to do whatever they were going to do with Hulk and Shingo there, and would have had a longer run out of at least having time to plan for a backup, given when Shima's injury was, that at that point was 2.5 months before World. So just a lot more time there. As for the Shun stuff, it's funny the way that this happened emotionally, where he gets hurt, and I'm feeling very just worried about it, because Yamato versus Shun is the biggest match they have. It's been built up explicitly since January. The threads of these two guys go back much longer than that. I mean, it feels like a match that's been built since August 1st, 2021, the last time they had a Dreamgate match in this building. And it almost feels like you could really write the last 5 years of history off of that match and everything that's happened in between. I was feeling very very nervous about it. And then they announced the full Kobe World card. And I was like, oh, Yamato versus Shun's on there. Clearly, Shun got spooked. This isn't that big of a deal. Whatever. Kobe World's good to go. And then the other cards come out, the late June, early July cards, including the Korkin, and there's no Shun Skywalker. And now I'm back in this feeling of like, oh my God, what are they going to do? Again, the closest historical comp is the Shima Hulk Shingo situation from 2008. That one not only had the benefit of more time before they had to do an actual match, it also had the benefit of the champion's the one that got hurt. Shima vacating the belt was not an easy thing to do, but there's an easier solution there. This is a challenger, and not Mochizuki and not Jason Lee, even though I liked the build of those matches a lot, especially the Jason match. I really liked the build of that. I like the build of those matches, but this is a prime time 1A level build with a 1A level challenger. And it doesn't matter what promotion you're in the world. If you're lucky, you have 2 of those. You have the person who's immediately going to challenge and the person that will challenge after that. But realistically, and Dragongate's in this situation, although we can talk about a few alternatives here, Shun was the guy for this spot, and they might be without him now.
Yeah, and it's really like, there is the Cork and Hall show that I guess like just you're able to literally do something there, and you have a main event of Yamato versus Amare, which who's to say that's tipping a hand one way or another, really? But it's just not 1-to-1, and especially really a championship reign that, I mean, we talked about it last week when we broke down all the title situations, that kind of was built, and this was the challenger that it kind of was built to, especially with the power of hindsight. And what are you going to do? You can't like pull up and go with your B option, because the B option probably is wait until after King of Gate and have the Yuki Yoshioka rebuild, right? Like this was the clear exit. There's not going to be another good exit for this kind of Yamato run that I think we can say critically a great success business wise. There's a lot of questions about, and especially now having to have more months of that when you were planning to have potentially the biggest match that you could have in this company at this time, and get the belt on someone who in most circles is considered the most popular star in the company. Like there's just not a way to do a clean transition to that. And it doesn't make me think that Hamare really kind of put in this situation other than kind of buying time. It doesn't make me feel like that he is going to get like the big upset here and then instantly insert him into the match, and we're going to be in the same place here. It's just does not seem like that. No matter what you're going to try to pull out, it's not going to be the same.
It's not going to be the same. I'm certainly intrigued by the idea of Yamato and Homare at World. I think that would be so captivating just because there's literally no historical comp for that. You know, Nakamura kind of, but Nakamura was more immediate. This is something entirely different. I think Yamato versus Kakuta would make sense. I would be more intrigued by Homare, but I think Yamato versus Kakuta could easily headline World. I wouldn't bat an eye at that. And then you have the 5 guys, I guess 4 of the guys, in the 5-way Gaora TV title match with KZ, Doi, Mochizuki, and Kai. Obviously, Yamato's beating KZ. He's beating Mochizuki in this reign. Yamato versus Doi would be odd, but it could headline World. Yamato versus Kai, not necessarily something that I want to see headline World, but something that in canon would make sense. And I certainly don't think I could be pissed off if that was the match they ended up going with.
Yeah, I feel like that Kai is someone that they have kind of built up and has, like, after that run, he has the credibility that if they wanted to kind of move him up for the defense, and you have that backstory that kind of works with him with that. I think Doi is just, yeah, the Doi as a member of the Dragon system has that kind of pull, but like, you're going to have to do a lot of work to kind of get him back to that point, at least looking at how the card's kind of presented, right? Like, how is Doi going to be in a situation and go like, you know what? I'm taking the Kobe World main event. That's kind of the situation I feel like with at least some people in that 5-way match. But like, Homare is captivating because you have the idea of Homare debuting and getting a Kobe World main event is still in his rookie year. And if you have that kind of situation there, I don't know if you then kind of go all in then, because I feel like you kind of have to. If you're already going to put him in that main event spot, you might as well ride the horse and see where it's going to get you. You know,
I understand that line of thinking. I think if I had the pencil, I'd probably be in the same boat. I don't think there's any way they take the belt off of Yamato if Shun is not in that match. I think that goes for Homare. I think that goes for Kakuta. Yeah, I think that goes for Doi.
It makes his title run a massive like lack of face in a way, because he spent the whole entire time like building up this wall, and the person that he has ever shown that has figured out the wall is the person whose knee might be blown out.
Yeah,
you know.
But you know, it's a lot of time before World. They're gonna rest him. They're gonna ice him. We'll see what happens. I think at this point, I'm going to expect Yamato versus Shun that second weekend in July, but we'll have to see what happens. I was really liking the build to World. This has been an added wrinkle that is more stressful than enjoyable, but certainly a newsworthy Kobe World season.
Yeah, and also there's a bit of me that wonders with like how very intentionally they've kept Yamato and Shun apart, and they've had Yamato work all the way through the rest of Zebrats. I wonder if Yamato versus Homare was already the play-in match for July 3rd.
It would not surprise me.
Yeah, but that did kind of cast a shade over the weekend. We got the full Kobe World card case, and it's 5 title matches for Kobe World with that 5-way match that you mentioned right then. But top to bottom, after we had the Bravegate situation be settled at Kobe Sambo Hall along, as well with not Shun Skywalker, Strong Machine J versus Madoka Kakuta, no DQ. The undercard just kind of had to end up the way it did with those kinds of pairings, wouldn't you say?
This 5-way match really bugs me. We won't do a full Kobe World preview here, but I can run down this card real quick. It's, you know, opening match, BB Hulk, Susumi Yokosuka, and Kagetora versus Ryofuda, Daiki Yanagiuchi, and Akihiro Sahara. It's great to see Sahara back on that show. 8-man tag, Ultimo, Don Fuji, Yasushi Kanda, and Sachihoko Boy versus Ho-Ho Loon, Ho-Ri, Reach Tamanaga, and Problem Dragon. Match number 3 is that Gaora TV Championship match. It's a 5-way match with Takashi, defending against KZ, Naruki Doi, Masaki Mochizuki, and Kai. No DQ match. This was added to the card over the weekend. Strong Machine J versus Madoka Kakuta. Open the Brave Gate match. This was also added over the weekend. UT versus Ryoya Tanaka. You've got the special tag team match at match 6 with Yoshioka and Daya against Dragon Kid and X. Match number 7 is that Triangle Gate 3-way match. Ishin, Kato, and Homare defending against Monte, Flamita, and Bendito, and Kame, Rita, and Mochizuki Jr. Match number 8 is Minoura and Jason Lee defending against Benkei and Hyo. And your main event as of now, Yamato versus Shun Skywalker.
Yeah, so we had a lot of the big pieces kind of already figured out. There was like a couple posts that before they had the full lineup that kind of made it seem like D Courage versus DK and X was going to be the semi-main event. But when you like look at how everything is laid out here, and with probably that Brave Gate or that's actually that special tag team match is probably your intermission match right there, and then your main event and then your 3 matches after that, in theory, being all of that young side of the roster. I feel like it's kind of an interesting story of two halves. Kung Fu Masters here, it makes sense having them on the undercarding, and then as a way of keeping the Mochizuki Dojo Kids and Paradox as like a set kind of match. And we weren't going to get another 25th anniversary kind of old guys match there. Yeah, the 5-way is kind of the weird match, and the one that kind of was like, oh yeah, you won the Battle Royal, but guess what? You will be getting your title defense, but let's have it be against these 4 heavy hitters. Takashi was kind of it is something that when that match was made, of course, they didn't know that a match later, Shun Skywalker would have the knee injury, but it did kind of, in a way, now fence them into that position, you know?
I do not care for that 5-way match. I don't want to rebook the card. I don't want to dive into fantasy booking there, but I don't know. Maybe if Takashi just rolls out of the ring and it's a 4-way match up until the finish when he steals a pin, maybe that'll be okay. But I'm having a hard time stomaching a Kobe World where you lose KZ, Doi, and Mochizuki to a match like that. I really do not like that, and I like everything else on this show, but I'm having a really hard time with that.
You know what just occurred to me? This, in its own weird way, is the Stalker Chikawa slot. And this is probably going to be a lot of comedy, this match.
Yeah, which, that's
It's a
fine.
choice.
That's fine, except for that KZ, Doi, and Mochizuki are in the match.
True. Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing. This is not like Hongman Choi a couple of years ago where you were tying up just Stalker and Ryo Saito.
Yes. Yeah, no, this is... I'm going to be very curious to see how they execute that match, because if it's long and it's bad and it overstays its welcome, I'm going to be really, really crabby about it, just because, to reiterate, it's KZ, Doi, and Mochizuki. Now, again, there's the alternative where they do a spot that takes Takashi out of the ring very early. They work a work rate 4-way match, and then Takashi steals the pin. That's fine. I can live with a 3.25 star match. My fear is that it's going to be something far worse, far more offensive. And by the way, it's KZ, Doi, and Mochizuki at Kobe World.
And then you follow that up with Strong Machine J and Madoka Kakuta in an absolute blood feud where the no DQ match feels completely earned after their feuding over the last 6 weeks. So you have like that tonal difference happening too.
Yeah, I will table my thoughts on that for when we do a full-on Kobe World preview, but I will note that I did love the finish to it's the match that Shun Skywalker got hurt in, so it's a bit of an odd watch, but they're a multi-man in Kobe that in it with Strong Machine J, who was behind Madoka Kakuta, Strong Machine J launching a chair into the back of Kakuta falling, and Strong Machine J rolling in and getting the count-out victory. Really enjoyed that. That is a well-earned no DQ match. I have very high hopes for that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But that's where again, at press time, the Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival 2025 card is of right now. And we got through an interesting pair of shows in Kobe to get their case. We had we're doing not necessarily like our quarterly check-in on Prime Zone, but we'll talk a little bit about the Ishin Secret Dungeon episode of Prime Zone, as well as that Kobe Sembo Hall show. In that case, I guess we can kind of talk about this, the Prime Zone real quick. Ishin is a charisma monster, and this is kind of really, at least out of the guest GM era, other than Scrapper Die Rita reincorporating Fujiwara Gumi during a Prime Zone. This I feel like was like the best foot forward for doing this kind of low stakes comedy show.
I was told that all of the seats for this show sold out, which was the first time that's happened since they've rebooted Prime Zone, which is a testament to Ishin to some degree. I think this show is the perfect litmus test for if you're somebody who maybe hasn't checked out Prime Zone ever, or at least hasn't checked out these new school Prime Zones. I think you can throw on this show, which is an hour and 14 minutes on the network. And if it's something that vibes with you, I think you're somebody that should go back and watch all the other Prime Zones. If you're somebody that isn't enamored with this, then I think you're probably good on Prime Zones going forward. I thought this was an incredibly well executed show that also wasn't entirely for me.
Yeah, at least for me with this Prime Zone, as much as I really, it's kind of like the compare and contrast. Ishin, the more he gets into his Ishin things, the more entertaining it is for me, kind of contrasting that with Hyo and his sipping from the charisma fountain. But you don't necessarily get it. Well, first off, for those who aren't familiar with Prime Zone, this is all basically out of Dragongate continuity. You might be teaming with your partners and your stablemates, but sometimes Ishin is your GM and you're suddenly having a 2-on-1 match with Sachioko Machine and Mondai Ryu getting torn through by Madoka Kakuta. Nothing lasts long on Prime Zone. It's just, it's very much one kind of show, and you contrast that with the other hometown kind of show with Kobe Sambo Hall, and it's just two different kind of experiences. I did enjoy Mochizuki Jr. versus Rita fighting over what they thought was a Nintendo Switch 2, and it ending up being just a box of photos of Ishin smirking in a towel. Like, I thought that was enjoyable, but it's not necessarily something that every month I feel the need to keep up with.
It wasn't a hard watch at all. I'll just put it that way. You know, this is a show that flew by. Again, hour 14. The Sahara return was quite exciting. The Rita Jr. match, for what it was quite exciting. Main event, I thought, was good enough. So, again, if you haven't checked out a Prime Zone, this is the one to check out. And then from there, you can kind of figure out if this is something you'll need in your life or not.
Yep, that's a good way to put it. And then Kobe Sambo Hall, we talked a lot around the Natural Vibes versus Z-Brats match. I'm going to run through the show real quickly. Yoshioka and Mochizuki went to a time limit draw. Royal Sambo, it started with Sahara being back against Takashi, and it ended with Sahara versus Takashi, but he got the Pineapple Bomber, and then we went right into the build for that Gaora TV 5-way. Original Jimmy's team, Susumi Yokosuka and Kagetora Paradox versus Kai and Kato. But before this really even got going, this went to a DQ, them attacking, Z-Brats attacking the referee. Kung Fu Masters versus Ben Jr. and Rita versus Flamita Monte and Bandito. This was the Rocket Power Slam that you gift case that got the finish for Team Mexico. The Strong Machine J match we discussed. Daya and Ryoya Tanaka versus Hyo and Jackie Kamei. Tanaka gets the win clean over Hyo with what's kind of becoming like his finishing combo of the Crimson Smash and then the two cross sabers. And Yamato and Not Hug versus Minoli and Ishin. Yamato got the win with a Frankensteiner and out of the Almighty, out of what I would call a very professional 6-man tag main event.
Quick hit thoughts on this show. Going from the main event on down, I thought the main event, like you said, very professional. Did not have the charm of some of the other Z-Brats Paradox matches that I've seen, but not a bad watch by any means. In the semi-main event, I continue to be taken aback by just how over Hyo can be on a show-in, show-out basis. I would like to see them do this match on another show. Run it back in a different building, maybe Osaka number 2. The Shun injury took me out of this show so much, even though I wasn't watching live. I knew what was coming, and then I skipped through the intermission. It still just rocked me to such a degree that I don't feel like I gave this match the focus it deserved, but there was inherent chemistry there with all of those guys.
I thought this was the best match on the show. So Like, it's worth
Yes.
revisiting if you're able to get out of the Shun headspace for it.
I really, really liked the Mexico, Japan, Hong Kong three-way trios match. If anything, it was just a showcase for Rita and the little freak that this guy is. I mean, he has a sequence here where Bendito does a leapfrog over Genki Horiguchi and then does a corner splash on Rita. And then Ho-Ho comes in and he tries to leapfrog over Bendito and Genki and then do a corner splash on Rita. But Rita counters. Rita then does a double step. He jumps onto the back of Ho-Ho and then onto the back of Genki into a Hurricane Rana on Bendito, drops him to the floor, does a swinging Hurricane Rana on Flamita that looks absolutely insane, and then does his twisting tope over the top rope onto Flamita and Bendito. It was 30 seconds of Rita that demonstrate exactly why he is such a special, special wrestler. The size that he is compared to the charisma that is so larger than life is such an interesting combination. He did all of that flawlessly. I love that match, and I have to give Joe Gagne the credit. He's the one who gifted that finish, which is absurd. If you have not seen it, I have retweeted it, but go to the wonderful Twitter account that is at Joe Gagne and watch the finish of that match if you have not seen it. Otherwise, a perfectly fine show. You know, Mochizuki versus Yoshioka was, you could tell from the first 30 seconds they were going to go to a 15-minute time limit draw. The match was
just
good.
Going for, just working for the arm. Just working for the arm.
The match was good, but they have obviously had better matches. But a fine show with the one glaring thing being, again, the Shun Skywalker injury. So those are the Kobe Samba Hall thoughts that I have.
You know, that if this was 1999 case, and you are in the WWF writer's room, Rita now would be referred to as that little freak on TV. Because it, like, in a completely, like, the most endearing way possible. He might be the most complete wrestler in the world at like 5'1".
He's amazing. I don't need to do a Dragongate guys are underrated segment right now, but he's pretty amazing.
No, okay, so we're going to be in our bag for something else that we are going to do. Where, Case, we've spent pretty much the last 300, and at least at this point, about 340 days, just kind of in awe of what kind of Dreamgate run we've gotten from Yamato in his sixth reign with the belt. That we sometimes while you're in the moment enjoying something like this, and it's just like as great as we are thinking, it's worth kind of trying to kind of putting it into context, and also as like a fun exercise. Case, you decided that we're going to do Dreamgate tier lists.
I did. We haven't really done something like this before, but I wanted to do a Dreamgate tier list in which we rank the 40 Dreamgate champions in history over a certain grouping sort of parameter here. The tiers that I have set up, and Mike, if you disagree with these, please let me know. But I think what we're going to do here is we are doing S tier, which is the best, A tier, B tier, Shingo Takagi 2008 as its own tier. I think that is the perfect average Dreamgate title run. And then C, D, F, and then no defense reigns. NAs, people that did not defend the belt once, I found them to be sort of impossible to categorize. So they're going to get their own category as well.
Yeah, so there are 40 Open the Dreamgate Championship reigns that we are going to be discussing. I think bringing up the no keys and transitional reigns, we could kind of also say that really we are considering this as 39 championship reigns because of the 22 through 24 Dreamgate champions are Shingo Takagi from August 16th, 2015 to Valentine's Day 2016 when he dropped it to Susumu Yokosuka, who promptly dropped it back to Shingo Takagi in his first defense on March 6th, 2016. We're combining the Shingo third and fourth Dreamgate runs into one just consistent one. Susumu from that ring. What are we doing with this? Well, there are 5 people in Dreamgate history who have had essentially zero keys or very clear transition reigns that it's just worth kind of putting them off to the side for various reasons. That you would have like the Susumu situation where it was an upset and then Shingo Takagi was able to right the course. That's a zero key situation. Benkei last year, case if the power of hindsight, and also we probably a little bit acknowledged this at the time, they weren't going to have Monte main event Kobe World basically 2 years in a row. The cage match with Shun Skywalker and Ultimo, the 5-way mask match, that was one thing. They weren't going to have that be the Dreamgate title run. So Benkei very quickly picked up the Dreamgate title, had 0 defenses, and dropped it to Yamato last year at Kobe World. That's what we're kind of putting these reigns off to the side, because it's not that they were bad reigns. They just were in service of something else. Or in the case of Ryo Saito, they built it up to all for him to winning the belt, and then he lost it in his first defense.
And with that, I think we can begin this tier ranking list. Oddly enough, we start with CIMA in his Dreamgate run. This was July 10th, 2004 through December 16th, 2004. And he made 0 successful defenses of his Open the Dreamgate Championship. Thus, we are putting him in the 0 key tier. Any memories of any thoughts on CIMA's, I guess, extended time? Oh, no, I'm sorry. He defended the belt against Susumu, didn't he?
Yeah, no, he had 1 defense.
Oh my God! We're off to a bad start here. Okay, well then, real quick on CIMA. I'm sorry. I cage match normally when there's 2 listings, it's win the belt, lose the belt. But he inherited this run and then defended against Susumu, lost to Mochizuki. There's a lot of CIMA to be talked about, and the 2004 stuff to me is certainly on the lower end of things. I would give this a D tier ranking.
Yeah, I mean, I went a little higher. I ranked this as a C because really, what is my memory of this title run? It is CIMA picking up the belt at the press conference on July 5th, 2004. That's my real memory of it. It was important for him to be the champion. We could talk about what makes them, what our kind of like ranking rubric is here. But to me, at least, there's a reason why they kept the belt on CIMA until Masaki Mochizuki won it at the end of 2004, and you needed to have that kind of run to go off with. But yeah, you only had 1 defense. It was against Susumu, and it was really not much to call home about.
After that, December 16th, 2004 through November 4th, 2005. This is the first Dreamgate run for Masaki Mochizuki, a time that was defined by Final M2K, that being the unit that Mochizuki was in during this title run. A golden era of the company, this 2005 calendar year. Not only the great Blood Generation do-fixer matches that gave Dragongate its own distinct style and flair, but then you also had these incredible Mochizuki matches, the CIMA match where he won the belt, and then in succession, he defends against Saito, Fuji, Taka Michinoku, Shingo Takagi, and then loses it to the guy that we'll talk about here in a minute, Magnitude Kishiwada. This is, to me, one of the really, really enjoyable Dreamgate runs out there. I think the Saito match is incredibly memorable. I think the Fuji match is incredibly memorable. I think the Shingo match is incredibly underrated. And the Taka match is good. I've certainly seen Taka
maybe Taka's best Dragongate appearance.
I was just about to say, I've certainly seen worse Taka Dragongate matches.
And it's usually attached to CIMA one way or another.
Usually attached to CIMA one way or the other. 2 guys that have shockingly little chemistry despite all the things they have in common. For me, Masaki Mochizuki's 2005 Dreamgate run is an A-level Dreamgate run.
Absolutely. This, to me, is the first great Dreamgate run. And as I went along to this, in a way, I kind of see like, okay, who's everyone's kind of title runs is something that I as I was going through this. And the one thing about Masaki Mochizuki, his title runs, probably if you rank them on like per average for someone who has more than two title runs, like so only 3 or more, he has like my best appearance on the tier system. What a shock case.
Yeah, no kidding. Masaki Mochizuki, good pro wrestler. I'll go ahead and say it.
Yep. And then that led us to Magnitude Kishiwada. He defeated Masaki Mochizuki in November of 2005. He only held the belt for a quick 3 months until Ryo Saito, the Ascendant Star of 2005, goes into 2006 and unseats the former Big Boss Magma.
That's right. It's funny looking at Kishiwada solely through the Dreamgate lens, because when I think of Kishiwada, I think about the immediate impact that he made in his debut in June of 2005 and how much fun that angle was, which for those that haven't seen it, he came in as this invading monster, and his first night of the company, his first official match was supposed to be Shima versus Big Boss Magma, headlining a Cork and Hall show. And then he and Shima, instead of wrestling, they shake hands. He's rebranded as Magnitude Kishiwada. The one flaw in all of this was that when Blood Generation was founded, one of the rules of the unit was that there were no masked wrestlers allowed. That was their justification for getting rid of Super Shisa. When Kishiwada came in, they very openly were like, oh, yeah, we were just saying that because we didn't like Shisa. Kishiwada's cool. He can be a masked wrestler in our unit. And I don't love the way that played out, but otherwise, Kishiwada throughout his time in this company was a really fun wrestler who excelled in Dragongate matches and excelled in these big multi-man contests. As a Dreamgate wrestler, he's got the Mochizuki match, he's got the Arakin match, which I would label as fun, and then the Mori match, which I don't believe ever made TV. I know I've never seen it.
Didn't make TV, to my knowledge.
Yes, and then he loses the belt to Ryo Saito, and at a time when Ryo Saito was one of the best wrestlers on the roster, and I find the Kishiwada Saito match to be completely forgettable. Thus, it is a D tier ranking for me.
Yeah, easy D, pretty much for the reasons you laid out. I don't think Kishiwada, as a monster singles match wrestler, ever was on even close to the same tier as him in his tag or multi-man work. And it just, to me, D was kind of the forgettable run tier. And then with Ryo Saito, he had no defenses. He dropped the belt near immediately to Susumu Yokosuka. As Ryo Saito has no keys on that belt, he is taken out of the conversation for the tier list.
That's right. And so from there, we pick it up with Susumu Yokosuka's first Dreamgate run. This was from April 23rd, 2006 through November 23rd, 2006. Defenses here, he beats Saito for the belt and then defends against Hulk, defends against Dragon Kid at Kobe World, defends against Pentagon Black before losing it in November of 2006. Like I said, this is just an interesting era of Susumu's career.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel this way. It's not even that Susumu was a bad wrestler. Like, he's obviously not a bad wrestler, but when I see tank top, baggy pants Susumu, which defines his time from about 2006 through about 2010, a lot of the Ryo Saito and Susumu tag team, this baggy pants era of Susumu, I am just inherently less interested in that than I am M2K Susumu or Jimmy's and Beyond Susumu, or I guess Junction 3 and Beyond Susumu. This is the least interesting time in his career, and I think it's very much represented in this Dreamgate run where, the Hulk match is fine. I think the Dragon Kid match is actually kind of underrated, but this isn't any reign that I think of in any real way. I mean, this holds it holds no historical merit. It holds no influence. It wasn't a flop, but it didn't light the business world on fire. This is another D tier reign for me.
You see, I think just because of that DK match, it made it a C, just because of that, really. But like this stretch from about really 2005 up until Shima gained the back in 2007, one of the best times for like multi-man and other stuff going on in the promotion. The Dreamgate picture, though, after, and this happens sometimes with this belt as we'll go through this, after you have a really strong run, it's very hard. And I think only really one time in history did you go from a next level Dreamgate champion to another next level Dreamgate champion. They're, interestingly enough, doing this kind of exercise, and I imagine if we do it kind of by like, if we cross-sect it also by like length of reign as well, it probably would have some pretty interesting results just on like how, like, if you have a really long run that's considered pretty good, what happens to immediately afterward, and with like shorter runs versus long, like it's, but at least as it relates to Susumu, he's in the middle of kind of this not awful time period, but just not really their Dreamgate run.
Yeah, the bummer with Susumu is this is his only real run because, like you said, he holds the belt for a month in 2016 with no real defenses. And Obviously, Susumu's done okay for himself. I think he's one of the 30 greatest wrestlers of all time. The Brave Gate matches, the Twin Gate matches, the Triangle Gate matches, the Dream Gate challenges. They've all been phenomenal. But it is a bummer to me that the least interesting period of his career is the one that has a Dream Gate reign. That is a D for me, a C for you. We move on to Don Fuji, who was Dream Gate champion from November 23rd, 2006 through March 25th, 2007. Defeated Susumu for the belt, defended it against Masaki Mochizuki, and then lost it to Jushin Thunder Liger in March 2007. Another reign here that for me, I like historically that Fuji is a Dream Gate champion. I like that we'll always have that on his pedigree. Again, not a particularly interesting reign. I think the Susumu match is good. I think the Fuji match is probably their worst singles match. I mean, the 2005 Fuji challenge against Mochizuki is so much better than the Mochizuki challenge against Fuji. And, Liger is his own deal. We'll talk about it in just a second. But for me, this is yet another D tier reign.
Yeah, and it's just like, let's take Don Fuji. He is still in Blood Generation, who's nominally heel at this point. Like, I don't have my chart of when exactly Muscle Outlaws happened, but it was pretty soon around this time. And after this run, he kind of just does Mochi Fuji stuff for the next 16 years of his career. Like, this is it for him, as like, he will have Dreamgate challenges, of course, but like, it's neat to say that Don Fuji's a Dreamgate champion. If Dragongate ever did the Dreamgate title roll call that other companies do, I'd always smile if I see Don Fuji. But also, as an aside case, thinking about that roll call, it would be interesting to see, like, by year who is omitted from that roll call and who's brought back over time, if they did that. Because like right now, there would be major swaths that would be like, oh, it's Yamato, and then it's Yamato again. I wonder what happened between 16 and 19. Ricochet's not on that list. I'm just saying that for example.
Yeah, no, I would say there's a reason that roll call is not anywhere for public consumption right now.
Right? Yeah. So let's talk about this Liger run.
The 2010s, the only Dreamgate champions were Yamato and Mochizuki. How interesting! They just traded the belt back for 10 years.
Oh, look, there's Hulk. Hey, Hulk, how are you doing?
So Jushin Thunder Liger is next on our list. Like I said, he beat down Fuji at Memorial Gate 2007, which was March 25th of that year. Defends the title against Mochizuki and Cork, and then loses the belt to Shima at Kobe World 2007. It's funny to me. So when I got into Dragon Gate, I started following things at the end of 2013. And I feel like even in 2014, Liger was obviously an active wrestler still. I feel like the fact that Liger was a Dreamgate champion really meant something still. Like it mattered. It made the title more prestigious. And not to reiterate the Liger conversation we had from the last Those Days episode, where you and I actually felt the need to do a hey, is Jushin Thunder Liger underrated conversation.
Right, yeah.
The Dragon Gate run offers nothing to the legacy and the lineage of Jushin Thunder Liger. All of these matches were fine. I know the Shima match, I'm looking at it here, it's 25 minutes long. It feels every bit of 25 minutes. It is, of all the interpromotional stuff that Liger did throughout his career, you think about the Osaka Pro stops and the Noah stops and the Michinoku Pro stops that we'll obviously talk about in those days. All of these places Liger went, it feels like Dragon Gate might have been his least interesting, and for that, it is a D tier reign for me.
Just for the fact that, and this kind of makes me feel like why this reign happened. The fact that you got Jushin Thunder Liger versus Shima at Kobe World kind of raises it a little bit, just prestige wise. That's the only reason why it's a C for me. But it's very clearly like, if we were ranking C's, it would be the bottom of C one, and it's just because it's Jushin Thunder Liger adding his name to the championship. And even as I was getting more into Dragon Gate, and it was around this time that Liger was around too, it was just one of those things. It's like, yeah, Liger came in, and this was during like the CTU time, so you had Black and Gold Liger as Dreamgate champion, and he kind of invaded, held the belt, and then dropped it to Shima. And to me, that second Shima run is infinitely more interesting than any of the, I would say that 8th championship run is the first, like, to me, fascinating Dreamgate run of the company's history.
Yeah, just to recap for my sake, as we go through here, I have Shima's first reign as a D, I have Mochizuki's first reign as an A, and then Kishiwada, Susumu, Fuji, Liger all at D tier reigns. And I wasn't necessarily expecting that going in, but when I think about it, if I'm going back to watch old Dragongate, I am quite excited when I come across a 2005 Mochizuki match, and then there is just a giant swath of time where the promotion's obviously not bad. I love 2007 Dragongate. 2006 certainly has its moments, but these aren't reigns, or I'm sorry, these aren't eras defined by the Dreamgate belt at all. It's
Not at all.
Completely secondary to whatever the main storyline of the company is at that point. And that changes with this first big Shima reign, July 1st, 2007, when he beats Liger, and then he officially vacates the belt on June 29th, 2008. We were talking about that earlier, with his last defense being on April 27th, 2008. A defense against Liger, a defense against Owasa, and then Doi, Shingo, Gamma, Yoshino, and Ryo Saito before he finally vacates the belt due to his neck injury. Mike, this is very much your ballpark, your time frame, your expertise. I hand it to you. Your thoughts on this Shima run?
So the only reason why I don't have it higher than it is just because it was all very clearly leading to that moment where Shingo was probably going to get that win over Shima and in 2008, and that kind of colors it a lot. But to me, this 8th Dreamgate run, Shima becomes the first ever 2-time champion. This is when as you were saying, like 2006, 2007, the Dreamgate picture was kind of muddied and it wasn't necessarily the overriding thing. At this point, in 2007, Dragongate in the USA is a huge success with Ring of Honor, like to the extent that they were much more happy about it than Ring of Honor was. And you could go back through our Rewind and Rewatch series about the history of Dragongate USA, the first few episodes talking a lot about that. But it really kind of became the time that the Dreamgate belt became known. It's tough for me personally because I have Masaki Mochizuki's first run, that second run, as my first day on this. That this is kind of a B plus. That would have been an A if it came into a landing for me. So it's a B.
I look at this reign, and this is, I guess, an interesting point because the reason we're doing this is we want to further contextualize this Yamato Dreamgate run. We have the full context of this Shima reign. And I look at what he does here, and it's a Doi match that I like, but I feel like he has better Doi matches, and a Shingo match that is good, but I like better Shingo matches, and a Yoshino match that is good, but I like other Shima Yoshino matches. And I think for that reason, I have to give it a C. I think
that's entirely fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good reign, but I don't think it's a great reign. There's none of these matches that if I was going to build, my 25 best Dreamgate matches of all time, none of these make the list. I think the Yoshino match would be the closest, but I think I could rank 25 pretty easily without getting to Shima Yoshino from March 20th, 2008.
Yeah, and I think when you use this as a tier system versus ranking them 1 through 40 case, this is why the tier system kind of contextualizes things a little better. For me, there is no way that this was an A tier run when I look at this list of who I have listed as A tier. This doesn't compare to Masaki Mochizuki's first title run. And as we go on, I'm not going to spoil something. I have Pac's title run at an A. I would take Pac's title run over the second Shima one. And I think that every single one that you have ranked above it is one that is clearly better than this. This one just kind of, in a way, became kind of like the media darling one in a way, or just being the champion at the right time and having and being the first run that had upwards of 4 defenses too.
Well, and there's meat on the bone with this. Again,
Correct.
Outside of the Mochizuki match, you look at these, and this is the early days of Dragongate. I mean, they're still at this point fighting for an identity post Toryumon, and while things were going well, things could have been going better. And you hit this slog of Kishiwada, Saito, Susumu, Fuji, Liger, and Shima does bring them out of that. Especially by the time the calendar flips to 2008 on that Shima reign, the Yoshino match and the Saito match, it's like, all right, this is a real belt. It has real prestige. There's legs to this run. And like you said,
Yeah.
I think history would actually be far more kind to this reign had we seen it in the way that it should have.
Right. And also, you bring up Yoshino. This run is going to be reflexive of a couple of title runs that we will see as we get into the 2010s and 2011s. This very much was one of the ones that, like, you bring up Yoshino there, you file back ahead, like, oh, yeah, Yoshino had a Dreamgate shot back in 2008. And you see this kind of staging these guys. This was like the first run that I would say that like adequately staged the next generation that led to Shingo Takagi winning the Dreamgate at Kobe World 2008 against BB Hulk and holding it until December when he drops it at Final Gate to Naruki Doi.
That's right. So our first vacancy in the Dreamgate lineage, outside of course, Shima, essentially plucking the belt from obscurity. This is the first time that we did not see somebody officially lose the title. We saw somebody vacate it. Shingo beats Hulk at World, and then, like you said, loses it to Doi at Final Gate. To me, this is the ultimate median. This is in its own category. Shingo Takagi 2008 is what we should be basing all of the Dreamgate runs off of. There's 5 total matches, the Hulk match at World, and then a Cyber Kong match that I don't believe made tape. I know I haven't seen it. Another Taka Michinoku match, which I actually like this Taka match quite a bit, which is why it's in the position that it's in. And then the Susumu match and the Doi match. Of the matches that we have, the Hulk match is utterly phenomenal. The Taka match is very good. The Susumu match to me is a classic, and the Doi match I would put just a slight notch below the Hulk match. So you're looking at 3 great matches, 1 good match. It's a defining moment in Shingo's career, so it has historical merit to it in the ring. It's the best thing we've seen since the Mochizuki run. This, to me, is what I based every other Dreamgate run on. Was it as good or was it not as good as Shingo Takagi 2008?
Yeah, and this was a C for me, so right there in the middle as well. I think that this one also, you have this butting up against the core incident, and that kind of colors, like, Shingo went from basically being the first person, the first Trueborn champion, the first guy not to be trained by Ultimo Dragon to be a Dreamgate champion who was a Dragon System member, and it kind of like petered out, and then Shingo was in the wilderness. And I think that kind of colors retrospective of this reign. I think that Susumu match really like kind of was like the nod to, hey, these two guys have great chemistry now, and now we're going to go run with it in the UK and then later have it on native soil as well. And for that, it's a notable one. And I get how you kind of set it apart, because it is one of the ones that you kind of take a seat back and you go, is the next run, the next few, and I think this is a fair question to ask, Ace. You go Doi, Yamato, or you go Shingo, Doi, Yamato, Yoshino. And really, like we'll talk about the Doi reign in a second, but it kind of becomes a conversation out of which one out of those 4 kind of has the one stronger title run, and I think Yamato and Yoshino ending up in that situation, and that's what put Shingo at a C, whereas I put those other ones at a B later on.
And with that, we get to the Naruki Doi title run. He would have 2, but this is, in all capital letters, the Naruki Doi title run. The longest in history at that time, December 28th, 2008, when he beat Shingo, through March 22nd, 2010, when he lost it to Yamato in Sumo Hall, of all places. Defenses here against Owasa, Taku Owasa, Koji Kanemoto, Aki Bono, Masato Yoshino, Shima, Susumu Yokosuka, BB Hulk, Magnitude Kishiwada. Mike, I ask you, with 15 years of hindsight, 15 years since Doi lost this belt, are we too hard on Naruki Doi's first Open the Dreamgate run?
No, we are not, because it was not just that it was long and you had all-time stinkers like that Aki Bono match on it. He was getting some of like the out of guys he would later have much better chemistry with, some of like the worst performances out of them during this run, and it went all through the Cora scandal, so he was the face of the company during that. And I mean, you went from a period where Shima and they were doing really strong numbers in their bigger buildings, and then Doi, the numbers started going down with Doi as champion. And it was like the first time in 4 years that there was like a little bit of a decline happening. And you look at that Kobe World show that they had, and that was if you look at the attendance, that kind of becomes like the pothole. Naruki Doi has the first F grade Dreamgate run, and it's the same as it was in 2010 as it was in 2025, if you ask me.
Okay, so I'm not that low on it because
I also have a little bit of trauma of living through it.
you lived through it. I did not. This is a reign that I consumed in the aftermath, and I'll note when I get to when I was following things in real time. That's very interesting to me because I do not have this reign that low, and it is by no means a good reign. The Owasa match, the Kanemoto match, the Akabono matches I think are completely forgettable. The Yoshino one, which is the least circulated, I think, of the Yoshino Doi matches, is actually quite entertaining. It's from Corkin. It's Yoshino at a point in which I would label him scary athletic, and Doi by that point had been champion for 6 months and was still trying to find his footing there. I like that match. I certainly do not love the half-hour Doi Shima Dreamgate versus Bravegate match at World, but the reign ends with a Susumu match and a Hulk match. The Hulk match in particular is a match that I think really highly of. Now, I also think just really highly of Hulk during this time period, and I think that's a run long forgotten because, as we've talked about a number of times, Hulk's body and persona and just Hulk has changed so much since 2009 that we forget what 2009 BB Hulk was like. I would put this as a C tier reign. I think it's better than a Kishiwada or
Wait,
Susumu.
you think this is better than like the Don Fuji reign that was like 2 months and really was just situating it so they had someone with the cachet to drop it to Liger? I think this is much because they decided to continually keep the belt on him instead of going for Yoshino at that point, going back to Shima at a time where like Shima was at his peak. I think that and this also might be me again having to go thinking about this 15 years later. It seemed like there were so many times that they could have got the belt off Doi and things would have gone on, but it kept on dragging and it kept on dragging. It kept on dragging until Yamato put us out of the misery.
I think this reign gets better as it goes, though. It's a little like the Yamato run in 2016, 2017, which we'll discuss at length, obviously. But, Owasa, Kanemoto, Akibono being your first three challengers does him no good. Once you get over the Shima match, like I said, I really like that Susumu match, and I love that Hulk match. And then it ends on a strong note with Yamato. And if you want to credit that to 2010 Yamato being 2010 Yamato, I'm certainly not going to stop you. But I do take this run over Fuji, over Liger, over Kishiwada. I think this is a low C run, but a C run nonetheless.
All right, that's fair.
I can't give it an F because there's matches during this title reign that I like.
I mean, I like the Kanemoto match a lot. I think the Kanemoto match is the best match of that run, but I also have not willingly gone back through this run in a long time.
Watch the Hulk match. The Hulk match is really good.
All right, I'll give the Hulk match a shot.
Watch the Hulk match, and then you'll bump it up from an F to a D.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go that far. I like my balance. I've only so many S tiers, and I only have so many F tiers, and they're the same. I like that balance. 2010 Yamato was a different kind of cat. 2010 Yamato showed up with eye black and flags on his tights and would hide underneath the ring and then choke you out. 2010 Yamato was a monster.
2010 Yamato, this is a really fun watch. I'm so glad that before Yamato versus Mochizuki in 2025 that I went back and watched Yamato versus Mochizuki from 2010 because it gave me a greater appreciation of both guys in the way that they've been able to mold their career over time. Again, this reign starts March 22nd, 2010 with his win over Doi. It ends at Kobe World 2010 with a loss to Masato Yoshino. In the interim, the first ever DG USA Dreamgate match with him and Susumu, and then a Shingo match at Dead or Alive, and the Mochizuki match at Korakuen before he loses to Yoshino. I love this title run. I don't know if I loved this title run the first time that I watched all of these matches, because with Yamato, when I was getting into Dragongate, obviously he's less flashy than some guys, and so it took me a little bit longer to care about Yamato, to be invested in big Yamato matches. But the Shingo, Mochizuki, Yoshino, that back-to-back-to-back, that is a special group of matches right there.
Yeah, it really, it felt like the palate cleanser at that time. And really, him showing those aspects, like the Susumu match, I don't have my DGUSA notebook with me, so I don't have my recent rewatch, but I remember it being even for the time, a pretty strong match there. I went B on this. I thought that Yamato's first Dreamgate run was very good.
it is my first B tier ranking as well. I think this is better than what Shingo did in 2008, and thus it belongs on the B tier. Certainly not an A tier. We'll talk about Yamato and his best work in a little bit. But again, if you're going to base this off of, is it better than Shingo Takagi in 2008? I think it absolutely is. I think the Shingo match from Dead or Alive is more memorable than anything Shingo did. I think the Mochizuki match from Korakuen is a classic. And I think the Yoshino-Yamato match from World has aged incredibly well.
Yeah, no, that world match I think is pretty great. And Masato Yoshino, you go from a kind of quick run to Yoshino held the belt almost for 9 months or just over 9 months. He wins it at World 2010 on July 11th, drops to Masaki Mochizuki on April 14th, 2011. And wasn't it that a rematch that was going to happen because of Fukushima too? Like,
yes.
So he got an extra month with the belt essentially because that was going to be the main event at
Sumo Hall.
At Sumo Hall that year, and of course Fukushima 311 kind of took it out of there. And at least for me, Case, I felt like you followed up a great first run for Yamato with not his best run, but I felt like Masato Yoshino was so online and in some ways felt like he was so much ahead of your Shingos and your Dois at times that whereas Shingo, like it felt like he was a champion by the end of that run. Doi sometimes disappeared in the belt. Yamato kind of felt like this Hellraiser who came in, won it on his first challenge ever, and then just kind of was like, I'm the supernova. You had Yoshino a decade in, finally like be the Masato Yoshino that we all think about in our minds and having another strong B tier title run for me.
This is a B tier for me as well. The thing with Yoshino that is so interesting, and I've made this point before, is, he's an all-time great, and it's unfortunate for a variety of reasons that I think his legacy has probably faded quicker than it should have. But when you go back and watch these matches, and I adore the Fuji match, and I adore the Mochizuki match. He really ends this run on a really strong note. But you watch these matches, and Yoshino, like you said, despite being 10 years into his career, is really not at his apex just yet. And it's what makes his title runs that follow this so interesting, because it really did feel like we snapped our fingers and one day Masato Yoshino, who had been great for almost 15 years at that point, all of a sudden was just on this completely other level. And he had figured something out to where his mind and his body met. And for a few years there, we had a 1 in a million type wrestler. And the 2010-2011 reign is very good. The Shima match is really good. I don't love the Doi match, but the Fuji match and the Mochizuki match are incredible. Both notebook worthy. The Fuji match so memorable. The Mochizuki match so good. This is much in line with Yamato, a B tier Dreamgate run for me.
And then we have this 2-year stretch that I'm just going to call the golden age of the Dreamgate belt. And it starts with Masaki Mochizuki's first title, or his second Dreamgate title run he picked. He wins it at Sumo Hall in April 14th. Oh, not Sumo Hall, because I was shut down. What building did he win this at?
He won it in Korakuen.
Korakuen, yeah, that would make sense. He won it at Korakuen Hall after they had to reset the shows, and he holds it until a snowy night in Fukuoka, Christmas Day 2011, and he drops it to Shima in this. And I'm not going to bury the lead. This is my first S tier Dreamgate run. Masaki Mochizuki has some of the best Dreamgate matches of all time starting at this point. And I think it's otherworldly. It's my first S tier title run.
The Yoshino match in which he wins the belt, like I said, it's great. It's not the best Mochizuki Yoshino match. From there, Mochizuki versus Yamato, which if somebody told me this was their favorite Yamato match, I would not bat an eyelash. It goes to Mochizuki versus Kanda, which is the best Kanda match of his career, his best singles match. Mochizuki versus Hulk, which might be the best Hulk match that doesn't involve Shingo Takagi. Mochizuki versus Cyber Kong, which is the best Cyber Kong match of his career. Mochizuki versus Tozawa, which might not be the best Tozawa match, but is one of the 5 most memorable Tozawa matches. Mochizuki versus Saito, which I actually don't love, but most people do. And then Shima versus Mochizuki, which is the best Shima Mochizuki match. This is an S tier reign. This is what everybody should be striving to do, no matter what belt you hold in what company. The standard is Masaki Mochizuki in 2011.
When I think about Masaki Mochizuki, I still kind of think of him with the second generation Dreamgate belt and the green tights.
Yeah, I'm with you.
This is the title run I think about for Masaki Mochizuki. And very fittingly, the next run, this is the monster one, 13 keys. Shima holds the belt for almost 2 full years. He goes from Final Gate 2011 to Kobe World 2013. This is the longest Dreamgate run of all time. It's the most keys in a Dreamgate run. It was the advent of the Shima Royale. This was a title run that lasted so long that he started as a huge mega heel, and by the time he ended it, he viewed himself as a Greek patrician veteran. This is the Shima run, and this is probably for a lot of people, the most people identify the Dreamgate title is with this 14th Dreamgate champion, Shima's third tenure as Dreamgate champion.
That's an interesting point. I disagree. I think I'm going to echo what you said a minute ago and not what you just said. I think most people define or remember the Dreamgate belt as Green Tights Mochizuki.
I just think because of how long and at the time that they did, and this is like pre-streaming, Blood Warriors versus Junction 3 and Shima as Dreamgate champion, go through like the matches. Yes, you do have perhaps one of the worst Dreamgate matches of all time during this run, but I think that at least in my mind's eye, when I'm thinking about Shima, I'm thinking about him draped in the Greek flag with a Dreamgate belt that has like 9 or 10 keys on it, and it's from this run. And maybe that's also one of the Dreamgate images I have, because at least for me, back to back, you have 2 S tier title runs, and it just ate up the belt for 24 months.
What's the best match in this reign?
I think the Hulk World match is really good, or the Shingo beating the belt. The Pac match.
I haven't watched that Shingo match in so long. I really don't know what I would think about that with 2025 eyes. This is the weird thing about the Shima reign. To me, the Pac match is the best match. The Kness match is great. The Yoshino Osaka number 2 match is also really good. They had 2. They had a big Osaka and a small Osaka. But like, I don't know. I mean, the Cyber Kong match is its own thing. I don't love those Tozawa matches. I don't love the 3-way. I have no memory of the Saito match. I'd have to rewatch that. And then we haven't seen the Ricochet match. This is don't get me wrong. It's almost like LeBron Jordan at this point. This is an A tier reign for me. But when I look at the title reigns that I have in the S tier, starting with Mochizuki in 2011, then obviously we'll hit a few more as we progress here. I know in my heart of hearts, I prefer those reigns, what they meant to the company, and the match quality more than this Shima run.
Okay, and I think also maybe some of my coloring this is at least how transformative in the moment Blood Warriors versus Junction 3 was, and him being on top of that, and that does kind of color things in these kind of conversations.
You could. The problem is there's like a mix. We're going to get a DVD mix of random Shima Dreamgate challenges from this run, you could end up with, let's say Kong, Doi, the 3-way match, Kanda in one of the Tozawa matches. You'd be going like, what the hell is this? It was so long, but it wasn't consistently great the entire time. And I can't call a reign like that an S tier reign.
That's fair. Shingo Takagi will be the next Dreamgate champion. He won the belt at Kobe World 2013 and then promptly lost the belt to now newly heel Yamato in 2013. There was no defenses. This belt is taken, or this title run is taken out of the tier list.
If I could rank it, I would give it an S tier reign just because I loved the booking of it so much, but we're going to put it in the zero defense category.
And then we have Yamato's second run. This is the first run that he has as the almighty Yamato. He wins it in August, and it's a really short run. He drops it in October to Yoshino.
I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I have this 3-match Yamato run as an A-tier reign. I think all of these matches are incredibly memorable. The Shingo match being the worst of the bunch, but the finish being so shocking. Yamato being this fully developed Mad Blankey character so early into his run in Mad Blankey. The Saito match, which is the best match of Saito's career. And then the Yoshino match, this is what I was referencing earlier. Yoshino walked into Cork on October 10th, 2013, and he was a different man. And it's not that the Yoshino that we had been watching was anything less than great, but this Yoshino was different, and he had the perfect dance partner with Yamato. And despite this being so short, a title win at the end of August, a defense in mid-September, and a loss in mid-October, this to me is an A-tier reign.
Congratulations, Case. You managed by that passionate defense of this run. I was not really high on this run. I had it as a D, honestly.
Okay.
It just was one of those.
I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. Go ahead.
I forgot how good as soon as you brought up the Yoshino match in Cork and Hall, I was like, fuck, this actually is a much better reign than I gave credit for.
Here's the thing. If there was a Dreamgate channel, right? I'm going to use Bill Simmons' rewatchables logic here, where if on your cable guide, if it was TNT, TBS, AMC, and then the Dreamgate channel, where all it did was show Dreamgate matches. If you were ever on your couch scrolling channels and a 2013 Yamato match popped up, you would stop what you're doing and you would watch the match intently. It wouldn't matter if it's the Shingo match, the Saito match, or the Yoshino match. You would stop in your tracks and you would rewatch it. And it is an A-tier run for that reason.
I think that the interesting thing about Yamato in this turn, he's not Dreamgate champion for much of his heel run as the leader of Mad Blankey. He goes over to Yoshino and then Ricochet and lands back up on him. But it does in a way, he steps his game up to such a degree that I feel this 3-year time period, even though he's not really around the belt that much. After 2014 and Kobe World, he doesn't touch the belt for 2 years. But in a way, you kind of always think about him in the yellow robe with the Dreamgate belt, in a way.
I'm almost talking myself into making this an S-tier reign.
I don't think he has longevity to do S tier.
I don't think I can do it. But man,
think about the other S's and where it ranks. It's not S.
Well, let's go there, because Masato Yoshino, his second reign, October 10th, 2013, when he beats Yamato, through March 2nd, 2014, when he loses to Ricochet. He's got a Doi match, a T-Hawk match, a Hulk match, and a Mochizuki match in between. Mike, am I crazy for thinking this is an S-tier reign?
I'm at high A. High A with this. This is the highest one I have, just because this is the Masato Yoshino run to me. This is
1,000,000%. This is Yoshino at his absolute apex.
I'm going to refer to this that I referred to a couple times. Whenever I think about message board posting and I think about just people that have come into your life, whenever I think about Alan Forel to this day, I think about the it was just a screenshot from the Kobe or the Cork and Hall defense against Mochizuki with the disco ball lights on it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Mike, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I feel the same exact way.
And yeah, it's interesting. The aura is there for Masato Yoshino's second title run to be an S tier, but when I compare that to my other S tiers, I just think that there's a level of difference.
And
that's what keeps it at A. And it's a high A. It's my highest A I have.
The Yamato match is iconic. The Doi match is a 4-star match. It's
which for them in their chemistry is actually a high mark.
Pop the champagne, a massive win. It's a 4-star match.
Maybe that's what makes it an S tier.
The T-Hawk match. This is the November 7th, 2013 Cork. And this is not, what I'm about to say is not an anti-T-Hawk thing. The Yoshino T-Hawk match in 2013 might be the single greatest carry job that I've ever seen in the history of pro wrestling. And again, that's not an anti-T-Hawk statement, but T-Hawk is a deer in headlights in the main event of Corkin challenging for the Dreamgate belt. And Yoshino has the closest thing possible to wrestling a broomstick, and it is a 4 3/4 star match. It is unfair and unfathomable how good that match is, and it's entirely Yoshino. When they wrestled at World 2015, it's one of the best nights of T-Hawk's life. I love that match because T-Hawk is really, really good, and Yoshino is Yoshino. 2013, it's all Yoshino. I have Yoshino versus Hulk from Final Gate at 3 3/4, and then Yoshino, Mochi, and Corkin Hall, which is an era-defining match.
Five,
maybe the greatest Dream Gate match of all time, and then the Ricochet match, which is not great, but is really, really memorable. And like you said, it's the Masato Yoshino reign, and I think that counts for something. Now, maybe by that logic, if I'm going to award this as with an S tier because it's the Masato Yoshino reign, maybe Shima deserves that same treatment, but I'll take the 6 Yoshino matches here from championship win to championship loss. I'll take those over the Shima reign any day. This is an S tier Dreamgate run for me. And this is also, because I said I would note this is when I started following the company in real time. I remember being very excited to find out the result for Yoshino versus Hulk at Final Gate that year.
Yeah, gosh. It's just like the image of like Yoshino in the orange and silver tights, and then he bring out the green boys occasionally. And it's just one of those kind of things. And man, this is the closest I can get to S tier. I can't put it on the same rank with it, but like it's really like which one of Shima 3 or Yoshino 2. But like that's kind of the discussion here, because those are kind of the borderline ones in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's fair. From there we go to Ricochet. This is March 2nd, 2014 through May 5th, 2014. Wins against Yoshino, defends against Uhaa Nation, loses to Yamato. One of those reigns that is historically a very big deal. And while the reign was short-lived, the reign had a bunch of matches that I really enjoy, with I think the Uhaa match probably being the peak of these. I would have this as a C-tier Dreamgate run.
I just like, it really is like the match with Yoshino is pretty good. And then the Uhaa match is probably Uhaa's best performance in a Dragon Gate ring. The Yamato match at Dead or Alive did not really hit with me. And the more I think about it, this is like one that I feel like gets rated highly because of the fact that it's Ricochet, the first foreigner Dreamgate champion, at a time where it felt like Ricochet was conquering the world, maybe. And that's what colors it a little bit. It's hard for me to go above D on it, but I know, and I get why you went C with it. I just feel like this is a run that's basically like a solidifying / telling the story, with Ricochet being the first foreigner Dreamgate champion.
I like the matches enough to put it in the C tier, but I'm not gonna fight you there. We go to the third Yamato run. This is him beating Ricochet, then defending against Genki in a match that nobody's ever seen. A match against Susumu that aired only during intermission of Kobe World 2014 on the live Ustream feed, and then him losing the belt to BB Hulk at World that year. I have this as a C tier reign only because the matches that we saw were not bad matches. And I can't put him in the D tier because I feel like that's penalizing him, and that's not fair. This is aggressively C tier for me.
You see, I'd almost take this one off the board.
It's almost to that level. I felt like I debated that in my own head, but I like the Ricochet match and I like the Hulk match. And I have gone back and watched what aired of the Susumu match. This is a C tier reign. I'm comfortable saying that.
You see, I go in the other direction. It very clearly was Yamato taking the belt so that Hulk can have his story at Kobe World that year. And it very much was Hulk telling his story. Like, Yamato wins the belt, and then in the next match turns on BB Hulk. BB Hulk turns babyface and starts forming the We Love Pantaloons team that would become Dia Hearts. I just think that this title run it's so short. Yes, there are those two defenses, but you're talking about essentially a third of a match, and then the match that he wins it and loses it. To me, that's a transition reign, and that is either an F or not rated. And it's not me being negative on it. It's just like, it's very clear to me what this run was, and I don't know if it actually because of what it is, it should be considered or not.
I will let the listener decide that on their own, because I want to talk about this BB Hulk run. This goes from July 20th, 2014 through June 14th, 2015. Wins the belt from Yamato, loses the belt to Yoshino. In between, there's a 4-on-1 handicap match where the belt is taken hostage by Mad Blankey, and then he defeats Doi, Cyber Kong, Tozawa, Shingo, Susumu, Uha, and then Cyber Kong again in the middle there. I'm curious to know your thoughts before I share mine.
This is the one that had the hardest problems ranking.
I did as well.
I have this one as A/B because when it peaks high, like that stretch that basically after up until he explodes his body and then Susumu gets another great match out of it, he was on the way to like an S tier run, but then it just falls off a cliff after that one match, and it really kind of limps in to such a degree that you kind of have a similar situation where kind of in a way the company felt like they needed to get the belt onto Yoshino, if only just to carry it through Kobe World. But it's a tough one to decide, because I feel like that there can be a decision. You could put this anywhere between S and C, and I could hear the arguments for it. Maybe S being a little high, but A through C.
I'd be livid if somebody had this as a C tier reign. This is not a C tier reign, and this goes back to the Hulk disrespect that unfortunately I think has plagued him over the last 7 or 8 years, because he won the belt at World 2014, and that felt justified. It was a little bit of the thing where it's like, all right, he finally won. They weren't going to beat him again, were they? But once he became Dreamgate champion, he became a viable, legitimate Dreamgate champion. The story they told at the beginning of his reign with the Mad Blankey stuff was really memorable. That Doi match is really, really good. I mean, a completely forgotten Dreamgate run. Again, we've seen 35 Dreamgate matches better than that one, but a really good match. And then that run from Tozawa, Shingo, Susumu through Uha, that Uha match is incredible. It's not until the Kong match at Dead or Alive that year, which is short, because that was a Dead or Alive where there were a million singles matches, I think, on that card. Maybe that was they did a qualifier deal. Let me look at that card.
Yeah, that was one of the either qualifying to be in the cage match or qualifying to be, or the loser becomes a hostage in the cage match.
This is just a weird card. This is Kanda, Tanizaki, and Shisa versus Kines, Ryu, and Tamanaga. Lindemann and Maria versus Arkin and Stalker. Hulk versus Kong is the third match on that show. Yoshino and Sachi Hokoboy versus Shimizu and Mochizuki for the Twin Gate belts, which I do not remember at all. Genki, Kagetora, and Susumu versus Flamita, Kotoka, and Yuti versus Fuji, Gamma, and Doi for the Triangle Gate belts. I don't remember that at all.
That's a dire three-way Triangle Gate match.
And then Tozawa, Dragon Kid for the Brave Gate, which I remember. And then this is KZ, Saito, Shingo, T-Hawk, Yamato, and Shima in the cage when Shima loses his teeth and his hair. And that, I remember the consensus from that Dreamgate match was that it wasn't bad. It was just weird because it was the third match on a show. It was an 8-minute match. There's no comparison point for any other Dreamgate match like it. So all in all, you have this great Doi match, and then this run, Tozawa, Shingo, Susumu, Uha, which are all great, easy notebook, you don't have to think about it matches. And then he lost to Yoshino in June of that year, and we'll have to reference Allen once again, because 10 years removed, I still remember him making the point that was illuminating for everybody, which was they had to get the belt off of Hulk because T-Hawk was going to challenge at World, and they didn't trust Hulk to carry T-Hawk, but they knew they could trust Yoshino to carry T-Hawk, and that's exactly what happened. This is an A-tier run for me.
Yeah, I think you have me erasing the /B. Yeah, I forgot how good the Susumu match was.
Hulk takes a fucking crazy apron bump in that match. There's a Yamato Dreamgate match in Corkin against Hulk where he also takes a bump, but Hulk, he killed himself on that Susumu match. It was nuts.
I would love to see the old Terry Funk X-ray of BB Hulk and just talking about his wild bumps.
I do not want to see that.
So Masato Yoshino had the epic job of having a T-Hawk Dreamgate match at Kobe World. He did that and then promptly lost the belt to Shingo Takagi at Dangerous Gate of that year. Kind of a transitional run, but one that got its results out of it, and it really, I feel like other than this being peak Yoshino, we more think about this run for the angle that happened at Dangerous Gate, don't we?
Very much so. I mean, this is, I put this on the same plane as the Yamato run from a year prior, where this served a purpose of getting to the Shingo match, with the note here being, the Hulk match I remember being just okay. I love that T-Hawk match. Yoshino versus T-Hawk in 2015 is a brilliant match. It was probably the last time that I had hope in T-Hawk. I really believed in him at that point, and I remember being really bummed that he didn't win. And then a month later, we got Shingo and the entire company changed. So I had this as a C-tier reign on the same plane as Yamato from 2014, in the sense that if I rank it any lower, it feels like it's an insult, but it can't be ranked any higher.
Yeah, I have issues with these clear world positioning reigns. It's a D, but that's probably like that's my own internal rubric about like, oh, you weren't really here to be a real champion. You're here to get us to the next champion. But Yoshino did his part there, and the 3rd/4th Shingo Takagi title run, as we mentioned when we started this segment, we're combining the 22nd and the 24th title reign and considering it as one thing. To me, it's one of the best in company history. Shingo Takagi has perhaps one of the best 3-match Dreamgate series if you take Gamma out of the picture and don't count it as 4. And it's, to this day, the one that I kind of compare a lot of Dreamgate title ones to, and in the way that I think that when you combine the runs, it's the best Dreamgate title run in company history, and it's an S.
I just remember him winning the belt, the post-match angle, the ensuing show in Kobe Sambo Hall when Berserk really becomes Berserk, and the sort of frenzy around that. And then the 2-month period from the Fuji match up until the Gamma match, because things permanently changed after that. But the Fuji match into the Mochizuki match and the fallout from that Mochizuki match was such a fascinating time, where I think we all realized after the Fuji match, like, oh, this is gonna be something. This is not any other Shingo reign before. This is something new. This feels like something new for Dragongate. And then the Mochizuki match happens. And if you remove the Gamma match, Fuji, Mochizuki, Shima, the 2 Susumu matches, which I make this point about Shun all the time, where, the worst thing to happen to him was that he had great matches with KZ and Yamato in the same weekend because they cannibalized each other. Go watch both of those Susumu matches. They're fucking mind-blowing. It's the best stuff they did in Japan together. Obviously, the UK stuff being a little bit better. The Ryo Saito match in Wakayama, which I don't know if I've ever seen. I don't have any interest in that. But then I've always been higher on this match than you, but the reign ends at World 16 with Yamato beating Shingo in the perfect build and the perfect match,
Right,
in a near 5-star match. So in that reign, he would have the 5-star match against Mochizuki, a 4.5-star match against Shingo, a 4 3/4 star match against Susumu, a 4.5-star match against Susumu, and then a 4 3/4 star match against Yamato. If it's not Masaki Mochizuki in 2011, as much as I would love to be contrarian, Shingo Takagi in 2015, 2016 is still the gold standard. An obvious, no doubt about it, S-tier reign.
Yep, no doubt about it. Okay, so I would like you to know that during this discussion we had about Shingo Takagi, the Rangers went from having a no through 7 to then giving up the no and now being down 5-4 within 5 minutes.
Jesus Christ. Oh, God. I thought I had it bad. Go ahead.
And speaking about something that felt really great, but then it turned real sour real quick, Yamato's 4th title run.
Ish.
It's an F.
It is.
It's not his fault, but it's an F.
So he wins the belt against Shingo, and in the same way that New Japan in 2020, when they did the double dome and Naito finally beat Okada, and it was like, okay, this is the end of something. We don't know what's coming next, and we never will because of COVID, but we don't know what's coming next. But anybody with a brain knew that was the end of an era for New Japan. We didn't realize it in the moment that Yamato versus Shingo was the end of an era for Dragongate, but it was absolutely 100% the end of an era for Dragongate. Yamato wins the belt July 24th, 2016. He loses it September 18th, 2017. in the middle defenses against Tozawa, Doi, Hulk Kong, a cage match against Berserk, which would have been Hulk Kong, Doi, and Shingo, and then a T-Hawk Kobe World match before losing it to Masaki Mochizuki in September 2017. I don't know if I could give any reign an F, but this one's pretty close. I have this as a D because the Mochizuki match really is so good.
Oh, it's excellent. Yeah.
When I clicked onto this cage match page, I really had a thought of like, you know what, maybe it's not that bad, because the Hulk match is really good. I mean, again, Hulk kills himself in that match. And, you know, the Doi match is fine. The Tozawa match is fine. The Tozawa match just had atrocious vibes to it, so it was really, really hard to overcome. But, man, you look at what happens, that abysmal Cyber Kong match, one of the least fun cage matches ever, the horrid T-Hawk match, and then it ends with Mochizuki. It's a D tier reign. I'm not going to give it an F, but it really was that bad.
And the one thing that you left out, Case, was Yamato won the belt, felt like, okay, someone finally killed Shingo Takagi, and then they did Summer Venture Tag League, and he did not have a defense basically for 2 months until that very awkward vibed Akira Tozawa title defense at Dangerous Gate, and then they have 2 months devoted to Akira Tozawa. Hey, I'm thankful for it, but that also meant that a very freshly turned Naruki Doi had to wait until Final Gate, when that match kind of there was a moment where I felt like, oh, are we going to go to Doi here as like the major baby face? Is this the time for that? And then instead of that off ramp, you had the summer or the spring and the fall of 2017. And I respect that you think F is absolute worst, but I think that just like when you sock everything up there, and if we were doing a list of 1 to 40 case, is this title run going to be above 35 for you?
No.
I think that's like, if it's going to be like in that percentage, it's kind of an F.
Yeah, it's really, I was wondering going in, I was like, maybe I haven't looked at this in a while. Maybe it's better than I thought. It's not better than I thought. It's real. I mean, I just remember my apathy for World 2017, and it was at a time, and I've made this point before, where I think some people are so weird in the way that they cover Dragon Gate, where they might think like, oh, 2017, 2018, I liked it more then when Shima was there and Shingo was there and you had Yoshino and Tozawa was just wrapping up. But like, man, 2017 sucked, and that world card sucked, and that main event was so bad. And it is truly the only time that I've been covering this promotion, which will be 10 years next week. July 2nd being my first day covering Dragon Gate for Voice, or will be my 10-year anniversary for doing Dragon Gate stuff for Voices of Wrestling. World 2017 is the only one. I did not care about that show. World 2018 I wasn't super into, but it was like, all right, there's some stuff here to like. Well, I did not care about World 2017. Yamato completely sucked the life out of the company by that point.
Luckily, you had the main man Masaki Mochizuki to pick up from there. He holds the belt up basically right until World 2018 and his last reign. So just to rank this case, first run Masaki Mochizuki, A tier. Second run Masaki Mochizuki, S tier. This one, it might not be as good as those others twos, but it's also an A tier Dreamgate title run, because the matches he just like the match that he won the belt was exceptional. And like the one like down mark I would say about this was the finish where he dropped the belt was real bad. But
I love that you also remember that. I was going to make that point, that the Yoshino Mochizuki match was actually really disappointing at the time.
It's the worst match that they had, but also it was very clear that Masato Yoshino was not at 100% or maybe 50% at that point. But Case, is there any way that Masaki Mochizuki was not an A tier in this reign for you?
You know what's funny is I actually had this marked down as a B tier, and then you started talking, and I was like, "What the fuck am I thinking? That's a
sumo match is incredible.
The sumo match is insane. I don't care about the Saito match. I remember just even at the time going like, oh god, I don't I don't care for that at all. Again, Dragongate 2017, not a good year. But to go KZ and Ben K back to back, and I like you've always been the KZ guy. You've championed that match, and rightfully so. I feel that way about the Ben match, where headed into March of 2018. Granted, I was in college at that point and didn't have all the time in the world to devote to Dragongate, but like I was almost out. I was like, man, this fucking company, I hate watching these shows. I'm not into it. I'm not into any of the guys. And the Ben K match is really what got me back on track. So I hold this reign in a very warm light for that reason. But yeah, I have no argument for me. It's an A-tier reign.
And then we had Masato Yoshino's last of his 4 Dreamgate runs. He picks it up in June and basically does another. It is him basically doing the old Yoshino carrying the belt into World, but this is a different world for Dragongate in June of 2018 when he wins the belt. It's more of Masato Yoshino riding the ship and being able to give kind of like the last burst of Masato Yoshino to Dragongate by taking the belt and getting them through the OWE and Strong Hearts Split into where they would be to close out the year of 2018.
So I almost use this as what I did for Shingo Takagi 2008. I think these are very similar reigns. I think the historical importance, like you said, the way that Yoshino came in essentially like a Papa Bear figure and wrapped his arms around the company and was like, guys, I've got this. That cannot be overstated. In the moment, it was such a big deal to just have this calming presence of Masato Yoshino at the top of the card. The Doi match is really good. The Ben match is really good. The Yoshida match, I actually remember being not bad. So I've got to give this a B tier run. I would have this nearly on the same level as Shingo in 08, but because of what it represented, I'm going to bump it up a notch.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily some of his best work, but like I still like firmly remember Shingo deciding and kind of shooting his own angle leading into Kobe World, where he's like, why did Yoshino get promoted up to this? Why can I do this? I'm going to take over. I'm going to become champion, declare myself president. And it's just both, it's like in 2018 eyes, how cool that was, but also now in 2025 eyes when I'm like, no, neither of you would do that whatsoever. But I stuck with the C with this one. And then we have Pac. He came in, beating Masato Yoshino, attacking him during God Save the Queen, and he holds the belt undefeated up until Kobe World 2019, where he drops it to Benkei. And in the meantime, having excellent matches with KZ, with Dragon Kid, and most importantly, the first Dreamgate title match for Shun Skywalker.
S tier without question.
This... man, I'm A, but you're...
Mike, look at the fucking matches. Pac versus KZ, Pac versus Shun.
4 3/4.
Yeah, Pac versus Dragon Kid, which is an
4.5 maybe
match. Yes, 4.5. And maybe then Pac versus Ben K. There's no flaw.
Say less. You sold me.
This is a flawless run. The Yoshino match is the worst of the bunch. I mean, it's Yoshino. I went 3 3/4 on it. I was like, all right, but Pac is back. He's going to figure this out, because you got to remember when Pac left and took that year off and then returned to wrestling. The early return on him was not great. He comes back in October. He's got the match, the match where he comes back, which is good. It's a chaotic tag. I mean, the energy in the building is unbelievable. And then from there, he comes back. He works that October tour, and he works at Gate of Destiny. It's Pac versus Flamita in a singles match, and the match is not any good. They did not have chemistry. It did not work. And then he stays in Japan through November. He ends up, November, he's got there's a great 4-way 12-man match at Cork, and that is super, super underrated. I think super forgotten about at this point. Wins the Dreamgate belt. He leaves Japan with the tag match Bandito and Flamita versus Daga and Pac, and that match rocks. But his UK dates, he didn't really light the world on fire at that point either. It's not until the Omega matches when his Q rating rises to the level that it's at now. But you do have this Dreamgate run, and this Dreamgate run was perfect. I wouldn't change a single thing about this. KZ, Shun, Dragon Kid, Ben are all iconic matches. It's an S tier run.
And then after Benkei wins the belt, everything kind of falls out for him.
Kinda.
Benkei holds the belt until December of 2019, dropping it to Naruki Doi. And interesting run, more kind of marred for Benkei outside of the title matches than him inside the title matches, to be fair.
Well, it was a really frustrating thing where they wouldn't put him in a unit. They were doing him and Shun as an unaffiliated tag team, and it just wasn't working. It's not what Ben needed. And so you look at the matches, and the Yamato match is enjoyable. The Mochizuki match is great. The Yoshino match I remember really liking, and then the Doi match is one of the biggest holy shit moments in company history. But we watched this in real time, and we remember feeling weird about it in real time. And because of that, I'm going to put it on the C tier, even though I like all of those matches. It didn't live up to the hype. It was a victim of its own expectations, but Ben was also not helped by the booking at all.
Yeah, and I think you can contrast that to other first-time runs that happened at the Reiwa 6. I was D on this, and I don't think I can be moved off it. It just... because I feel like this thing doesn't necessarily just pertain to in-ring stuff. Everything else around the run kind of tanks it for me. And that leads us to Naruki Doi, who won the belt in December of 2019. He would hold it all the way through closed doors COVID until Memorial Gate 2020, dropping the belt to Eita there. And it really the Naruki Doi reassessment committee started forming on December 15th, 2019, and he completely rewrites his narrative from that first title run, in my argument.
Completely changes the course of his legacy, the way we talk about him. It's all completely different because of this run. I was flirting with the idea of putting this in the A tier because of the lack of matches. It's a B tier run for me, but the Ben-K match is utterly incredible. The KZ match, utterly incredible. The Susumu match, everybody forgets because the world was ending at that point. The Susumu match is... I am at a loss for words. I don't remember if I went 4.5 or 4 3/4 on it. I think I went 4 3/4 on it. And then the Eita match is one of the 3 best Dragongate pandemic matches. I would have the unit disbands match with RED and Toryumon as number 1, and that might be number 2.
That's fair. I'm in an A because of how great those matches were.
God, I'm gonna keep it at a B, but man, this was 4 dynamite matches.
Yeah, and I think also the narrative kind of rewriting itself really helps him out there with that. Eita would have only one title defense. It would be against KZ before dropping it to Shun Skywalker at Kobe World 2020. So you're talking about 3 matches here, and it's really talking about 2 matches because that KZ match stunk. Like, that KZ match was a long angle to show Shun Skywalker was back. And that Colors of Rain that I think had 2 really solid matches around it, I ended up kind of going C, but which I know seems a little bit off for me. You expect me to say D on that just because I thought that Doi match was that strong. And I mean, at that time, Eita felt like the man of the moment in Dragongate coming out of quarantine, and it boosts him up a little bit in my mind.
I'd go see as well. I echo all of your sentiments. Eita lost the belt to Shun Skywalker, and this is the reign that I really want to talk about. Shun wins the belt from Eita November 15th, 2020, loses the belt to Yamato August 1st, 2021. In the middle, Ben-K, Kaito Ishida, Kazuma Sakamoto, Hip Hop Kakuta, and KZ. Mike, I'm going to throw it to you. I'm dying to know what you think about this.
I have just in my head regraded it to an S because you have to throw out the Kakuta match. You have to throw out the Kakuta match where Kakuta literally has a freak injury on the first on a drop toe hold. You have to throw that match out there. You have a guy who essentially his Dreamgate match records was probably, if I went through my notebooks, probably at like 4.66666 because it was either 4.5 or 4 3/4 stars. Remember how great the Kazuma match was?
And I was going to say, remember how great the Ben match was before the finish?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, again, this is an S tier feud, a run that just gets colored by like awkward moments. But in reality, when you look at the data, it's one of the best Dreamgate runs of all time. Case, I don't know how you got me to almost double my S tier throughout this exercise.
You've got me sweating over here because I had this as an A tier reign, and I think I'm going to keep it as an A tier reign. Just because
perhaps that no one has had a 24 hours that Shun Skywalker had on July 31st to August 1st, 2021.
I got to pull up my spreadsheet. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to go.
You're going to do this. It just looks right. Shun Skywalker and another S. It just looks kind of sexy, doesn't it?
I got to say, I think that's 3 S's. I don't want to co-sign that. Or that's double S is bad. Never mind. That's good that I guess I don't know white supremacy lingo. I've got 10 years of match of the year tracking notes. God, what a fucking waste of a life. Jesus Christ. I was like, oh, I've got 2014 in here. That's depressing. 2021. So Shun versus KZ 4 3/4. Shun versus Ishida 4 3/4. Shun versus Yamato 4.5. Shun versus Cosma 4.5. Shun versus Yamato in an empty arena match, King of Gate 4.5. That's interesting. And then did he have another one, or was that it? No, that was it. So yeah, Eita, I went 3 3/4 on. Ben, no rating, and then 4 3/4, 4.5.
But that Ben one was a 4.5 star.
Yeah. So realistically, 3 3/4, 4.5. 4 3/4, 4.5. No rating on the Kakuta match. 4 3/4, 4.5. Do you see what I mean? Like, it's going to be so hard. I was thinking about this with AEW recently. I know we're going long, but I want to make this point because I've been thinking about this with AEW. This company is now 6 years old.
Yeah.
And if you asked everybody in our bubble, let's take the Everything Elite Discord. Let's take the Voices of Wrestling Discord. Let's take the people that we interact with on Twitter. We poll all of them. I think there's going to be, there's going to be like 99% different answers on what is the most iconic moment in AEW history in their first 6 years. I was thinking about this with Ospreay because Ospreay and AEW is one of the great gifts that wrestling has ever given us. His year and a half in AEW is just, it's unfathomable how good he's been.
How he's translated from being a Puro star to a American TV wrestling star.
To an American TV superstar.
Yeah, cannot be discounted.
And if we all either, there's 2 scenarios here. AEW pay-per-view happens, and then if we all went out and bought that DVD when it came out and rewatched all of that stuff, it would become canonized much easier. And if there was the Will Ospreay comp DVD of his first year in AEW that we all had to go out and buy to rewatch his stuff instead of it just sitting on a Plex server somewhere. But if we all had to go out and buy that DVD, I think we all collectively would go like, oh yeah, that's right. This is one of the great runs we've ever seen in wrestling. And this is going to be the problem. And I don't know when the cutoff is. I don't know if it's 2016. I don't know if it's a little bit before that, but living in the mass consumption era, it is just harder and harder and harder for people to actually carve out their legacy, not because the talent is worse off, but just because, I mean, Mike, I didn't watch any wrestling this weekend, and I've got like 6 shows that I need to catch up on. It's all too much, and we never go back and rewatch anything. We never go back and rewatch anything that's 6 months old, let's say. We don't seem to have, as a larger collective, those comfort DVDs and those comfort shows and those things that we rewatch over and over and over again. And it's a disservice to a guy like Will Ospreay, and it's a disservice to a guy like Shun Skywalker. And I want to be very clear. While I think they're both historically great, Will is in another pantheon. It's not a one-to-one comparison between Will and Shun. But the point that I've tried to hammer home on this podcast over the last year and a half is like, hey, Shun's been around for a while, and Shun's been one of the 50 best wrestlers in the world longer than people realize. And that's the type of thing that, Susumu and Mochizuki and Doi, they already have a hard enough time because they're Dragongate wrestlers staking out their legacy. Shun is now living in this mass consumption era where nobody has a legacy. And it is an S-tier reign. Shame on me for not thinking so. And I just think the more you and I do stuff like this, when the name Shun Skywalker comes up, it's consistently going to correlate with whatever the highest level of praise is. It's a very long-winded way of saying that, but I've been thinking about that with AEW a lot recently, where it's like, man, we're all watching this company and we're all consuming things in a totally different way.
No, that's all really, really fair to say. And like, also like the aspect that Shun was doing this at a time, or at least this run, when they weren't allowed to make any noise other than clap your hands and stomp.
Yes, and then Yamato and KZ happened, and people made some noise, and it was very nice to see. Look, shame on me. Isn't it funny to look back on this run? In your analysis of this was correct in real time. I want to make that abundantly clear before I say this, but the analysis of Shun's run was, hey, he's a work rate champion, but this guy doesn't have. We don't know if he has the charisma to be a top star in all actuality.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's the thing that kind of, like, if you're going to neg this, it's not going to be because of anything in ring. It is the fact that at that time, Shun was not a good, charismatic pro wrestler. Like, and that you kind of witnessed this by how even COVID couldn't hide how, like, overwrought masquerade entrances were, like, eating up time on a show that just weren't over, you know? Like, and it's a real testament to him how from 2022 on, he's completely reinvent himself, and that's not a conversation we even really have anymore, is about Shun Skywalker in that regard. Let's talk about this fifth Yamato title run. He defeats Shun Skywalker at Speedstar Final and loses it in one of the biggest upsets in Dreamgate history to Kai at Final Gate 2021. Yamato was promising us like a reset to a Dragongate of old with that title run, and instead he opened us up to the Kai Gate.
I think this is the definition of a C tier reign.
I went D, but I can see why you would say C.
Yeah, there's nothing bad here, but there was nothing exciting. There's nothing from this Yamato run that I'm like, man, I gotta go fire up the network for that.
Right, and for these more recent ones, we'll go a little bit faster. Kai,
and I say that, sorry to cut you off, because I did give you an opening to talk, and then I realized I was like, oh, actually, I want to make a point here.
No worry.
There's nothing in this Yamato run that I would want to run to the network to rewatch, and I weirdly don't feel that way about the Kai run. There's actually two matches here that I would be more than happy to rewatch. These are two matches, to go back to the hypothetical Dreamgate channel. If Kai versus Shimizu or Kai versus Susumu was on, stopping what I'm doing and watching that match.
Yeah, and I think like that's like the real difference between these two reigns for me. I had Yamato's fifth at D, whereas I have Kai at a C, because you had like that Shimizu match really felt like at a time where they were kind of trying to get Shimizu back on track, so like really kind of reset him for that. And really, other than when Kota Minoura got involved towards the tail end of this title run, it was not a bad one other than the Yoshida match. The Yoshida match was not good.
The Shimizu match, I just remember being through the roof excited about, and then it ended up being really, really great. And then the Susumu match was a top 5 match that year. So I have to give this a C reign. It's the same tier as the last Yamato one, but I feel way more warmly about this Kai reign than I do the Yamato one.
No, I think that's entirely fair. Yuki Yoshioka won the belt from Kai at Kobe World 2022, which was the second night because there was Ultimo 35 that night before. And he would hold the belt through the fall of 2022, having matches against people like Yamato, like Eita, before dropping the belt to Shun Skywalker in January 2023 in one of your better called shots you've ever had.
I did kind of nail that one. I do have to pat myself on the back for it. I think the fact that this isn't a consensus A-tier reign drives me nuts. I think it is so obviously that. The Minoura match is completely forgettable, but Eita, Yamato, Mochizuki, Benkei, and then that Shun match, which I like more than everybody else. I mean, what are we doing here? Yuki Yoshioka was a great Dreamgate champion. He acted, wrestled, came across like a Dreamgate champion should.
The box office responded to it.
A few real nice houses there. The Shun match, the bummer with that is it just missed the return of actual crowds, which I think about that. January 2023 in Korakuen, and they wrestled in front of a clap crowd, but I still really like that match. I love this run. Easy A tier for me.
I was B/A, but the more I think about it, I would be fraudulent if I didn't have Yuki Yoshioka at A, especially just for that Eita match. The one match that would be on the Mike Spears Wrestling channel. It would be that, a bunch of Super Delphin, and then I think we would be having the the soccer at Chikawa block at like right when kids get home from school, they need to get some soccer at Chikawa. Shun Skywalker's second title run, he beat Yuki Yoshioka in January. He had a defense against Strong Machine J, and then he lost it to Madoka Kakuta at Dead or Alive 2023. Was there a second defense that I'm blanking out on?
Nope, just those three. And if the litmus test for me is Shingo Takagi in 2008, this is a B tier reign, because I love the Yoshioka match. The Strong Machine J match is super fun, and in the moment that felt huge. And the Kakuta match is a match of the year contender. I have no problem calling a reign this short a B tier reign.
I think that is a bit of our fundamental difference with this, because I have a lot of issues with like these 0 key, 1 key short runs. I had this at a D just because it felt like, in retrospect, clearly getting to the point where they can tell the Madoka Kakuta story.
But do you think it's advantageous because it served its it was designed with a purpose, and it couldn't have executed that purpose any better. Kakuta versus Skywalker couldn't have been hotter, and that wasn't guaranteed because there was a Strong Machine J match in the middle of that reign.
Yeah, and that Strong Machine J match, I felt like did a lot of work to raise Strong Machine J.
That was like, I mean, that was a huge talking point for us. Was like, what is that match going to be?
No, you're right. Yeah, no, I still think just because of the longevity, when I compare it to the other ones, I'm going to keep it where it is. But your argument is sound. Madoka Kakuta, he won the belt at Dead or Alive. He defended it in the most perplexing Dreamgate title match ever. Kota Minoura won things clean. He got a title match with him. Then it was who could stop the Shimizu. And then we kind of backed up into the Luis Monte situation for this title run. To me, this was a clear-cut C just because everything was great, and then he got the belt, and they were able to make it special a little bit for both Minoura and Shimizu, but now with almost 2 years of hindsight, it kind of drops when you kind of look at it when you compare it to other runs.
The Shun match is so good, and the Shimizu match is so good, and those other three matches are rough. You know, I've talked at length about my issues with the Yoshioka match there. I thought that did both of those guys a huge disservice. The Minoura match, I believe, was good, but is entirely unmemorable, which is a problem for a Dreamgate match that isn't even 2 years old yet.
It felt like a time that everyone was like, okay, Minoura, you could take the belt now.
Well, because
we never said that about Minoura before that or after.
Because he won King of Gate.
And he won it clean.
And the prevailing thought was like, okay, I remember actually writing, I think like a long form piece on, okay, we've gotten through the hardship of Coach Minoura. Everything should be smooth sailing from here on out. And little did we know that was not true. But the Minoura match is just entirely unmemorable. Now, again, the Shimizu match, I think the world of. That three-way match, I don't know, man. If I was Luis Monte, and my head hit the pillow every night, I'd be thinking about how that three-way match just fucked me for the next year.
Yeah.
It did not feel good in the moment, but it was like, all right, Monte's going to be something different. Let's see what they do for Monte. I'm bullish on this, because,
yeah, I mean, you're right.
It even unmasked, like that was the whole thing, was Monte lost his mask, and then
time to run with him.
It was time, and everybody knew it was time, but then they did it then, and it was just like, oh, this is gross. And it was more upsetting
because it felt like it was a Shun storyline that Madoka Kakuta stumbled and lost his belt in.
And it was, I remember making the argument in real time where I go, have Shun win the three-way and then have Monte beat him at Bayside, but Monte pinned Shun in the three-way match. He got his win back. And so
Shun DQ'd himself. He
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, I'll take care of this later. This is beneath me. I'm Shun Skywalker.
That's dumb. The Kakuta run is a C, and unfortunately for Monte, I love the guy to death.
Yeah.
But you look at this reign, it's like,
it's not his fault.
That Shun match was awesome. That Susumu match was really good, but the Valletta match fell apart. The Ben match was just okay, and the three-way match was a disaster. I have to give this Monte run a D. It did nothing to help Luis Monte's career.
You see, I'm willing to give Fs, and that's an F to me. And it's not his fault. The matches, the problem is that you can't really extract the Susumu and the singles match with Shun without going like you had to get through that 3-way to get to Shun, and then it's a good Susumu match, and that happens a lot for people in Dreamgate runs, so I'm not going to necessarily give that a credit. And again, this is one where the company kind of set him up to fail, like Yamato in 2016 to me, and it's not his fault. They like if my wrestling fight card was what his was as Dreamgate champion, I'd be getting an F as well. But it's just situational. And then Benkei had no defenses and basically took the belt so you could have Benkei versus Yamato at Kobe World 2014. So we don't consider Benkei in these tier lists in that run.
And that leaves us with this current Yamato run, and I'm kind of dying to know where you have this.
Oh, it's an S.
I see. I wasn't sure what you were going to say. I think it's an S too. I really, really do. And I think this run is only going to age incredibly well. But when you look at the S tier range that I think you and I have the same ones. Mochizuki 2011. I don't have Shima, but I have Mochizuki 2011,
yes.
Yoshino 2013, 2014, Shingo 2015, 2016, Pac 2018, 2019, and Shun 2021.
Didn't you have Mochizuki 2011 too?
Yeah, that was the first one. Yeah. I'd put this Yamato reign with all of them. I feel like it fits with that company.
Yeah, and I think that in a way that you look at how Yamato's runs were up until that, at least for me, he had a couple, like, you have that one where I'm like, is it a transition one? Should we really be considering it in 2014? His 2016 one, I failed. And then the one he had right before that, the Yamato one, like he had some good matches in that run, but it just felt like it was so kind of abrupt and then out of here. This is completely era and legacy redefining. And I think that no matter what comes out of the situation with Shun Skywalker in July 13th, no matter what, Yamato's got one of the best Dreamgate runs of all time, and we should be recognizing it in the moment.
I'm completely with you. I have nothing else to add. Well said.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Open the Voice Gate. As we said before, we will be off next week, the next time, unless there is a emergency update, and you'll be made well aware of that if that's coming. The next time you'll hear from us will be the week of Kobe World. We'll be having a expanded preview with Jay Church. He'll be coming on. We'll be talking about that. Of course, the July 3rd Cork, and we'll be talking about that. And then also it's a show of Jay. So pretty much anything in the Japanese wrestling landscape probably could be, and will be discussed without that. But
you're going to think the show's ending at 2.5 hours and Jay is going to just be warming up.
Yeah. You know how they say a third hour flagship?
Yeah.
It's really when you could tell Mike and Case have run out of questions and Jay wants to tell you about hustling.
And Jay's like, all right, so here's a life lesson for you. And I'm like, oh shit, I got stuff I got to do, but this is really entertaining.
Yeah. But that'll be the next time you hear from us. If we have an emergency broadcast, we'll let you know on social media. That's at Open Voice Gate, both on Twitter and Blue Sky. We'll also post about it on the Voices of Wrestling Discord and the Open the Voice Gate channel. But there's also a Dragongate channel that if news comes out, everyone will certainly be in there talking about that as well. Case is at underscoring your case. I'm at Fujiheya. Thanks for listening to Open the Voice Gate. We'll be back with you next time. Take care, everyone.
Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
When your company earns unlimited 2% cash back on all purchases with Capital One, that's serious business. So Steven at SandCloud got a serious business card, the Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One.
We used our 2% cash back to help build our retail presence.
Savvy, Steven.
And we get big purchasing power, so our business can spend more and earn more.
The Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at CapitalOne.com/SparkCashPlus.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.